Can we please talk about the market crash? Calm down. Calm your jets. Cool your horse. Calm your horses. Cool your jets. We're going to talk about the market. Are you insane? You think we're not going to talk about the market, dude? Are you kidding me? The market. Stonk go up, stonk go down. Nobody knows how it works. Okay. Sam went on Valuetainment with Patrick Bet-David, which is amazing. I love that. I'm so glad Unk went on Patrick Bet-David. Unk versus Unk violence. Feel me? We'll cover all of that. We'll get to all of that in a second. Let's blast off. I mean, that's it. There's really not much. I just did the Dan Le Batard podcast, and it was great. And I hope you guys like it when it comes out. I hope you listen to it, and I hope you like it. Apple's down 9%. Apple's down 9% already. LaFayette, let's go. Markets are liberated. Wallets are liberated. What are tariffs? How'd the Trump admin arrive at percentages? Why does the UAW like it? Get it now to find out. Greg Casar interview later. Viktor Orban pulls out of ICC to glaze war criminal Netanyahu. Greg Casar interview later. Okay, let's do it. What and wherefore U.S. representative? What? That's right. Big day today, folks. Big day today. Big day today. Lots happening in the world. Lots happening in the universe. You already know what it is. This is the place to get all of that. Don't you worry about a thing, baby. French President Macron announces le pause dans sa future and recent investments in the United States of America. Sacre bleu. We'll get into it. Wait. Don't you worry about it, okay? Oh! Hong. Wait. What kind of country is this? We are pausing the investments. He is getting litigious, trying to silence pro-Palestine voices. Bad Empanada and Noah, they've been served. Yeah, I heard about that. I'll probably get into that in a little bit because it's no longer drama, but like direct litigation. But obviously I'm not going to do that right now because there's so much going on in the market universe, in the universe that we live in. It's not that it's irrelevant. I'm not saying that at all, but yeah. Who linked that? I mean, it's definitely not insignificant. I think it's definitely something to talk about. He's saying he will see you last. This was always the plan if you watched his nuke. Yeah, I don't know why. I say this quite a bit, but I just don't know why he's doing this. I really don't. I don't know. That's it. They were not served. It was a request letter. Yeah, it's a cease and desist request letter, and it has no motion behind it. And it will just be a ridiculous round of costly litigation by a narcissistic multimillionaire who is hell-bent on destroying any kind of charity that people might have had about him. But that's irrelevant right now. We'll get to that later. Because you shouldn't be worrying about how much money Ethan Klein is wasting on his lawyers for frivolous lawsuits as he gets farmed over and over again, making it seem like he has a serious legal case in his hands. You should be worried about your wallets being liberated. Your wallets are liberated, ladies and gentlemen, boys, girls, and MBs. Let me tell you, your wallets will be liberated pretty aggressively, as a matter of fact, because Donald Trump, my goat, my glorious king, the absolute mad lad, he did it. He freaking did it. He did the dang thing. He's out of his dang mind. RIP to the stonks. RIP to the stonk market. It's tariff time, baby. It's tariff time. You're only relevant today because I did a show with you. He's a Delulu fuck. Watch later if you want. Okay, guys, stop sending me fucking Ethan Klein links. Okay, we'll get to it when we get to it. Jesus Christ. Calm down, everybody. There are adults here that don't give a fuck about Ethan Klein having an extended crash out for the past 6 months because he loves what Israel is doing and wants to defend it aggressively. but he can't do it openly, so he has to defend it by attacking everyone that criticizes Israel. Nobody cares about Ethan Klein right now, okay? Nobody cares about Ethan Decline. People care about the decline in the dollar value in their 401ks. We're going to be talking about that. Okay, let me tell you, money, it's just a piece of paper. Or in this day and age, in this economy, it's just a number on your screen. If you close your eyes, it goes away. If you close your eyes and maybe even doodle a couple extra zeros, it feels like you have even more of it. Money is fake. That's all it is. And not having it is also fake. And having it is also fake. Elon Musk will wipe out multiple billions of dollars of net worth like it's nothing, overnight sometimes, right? That's cool. I'm just telling you, these are the conversations you can have with your landlord when, rent comes around. And because you have purchased bananas that month, something that we just simply don't grow in the United States of America, and now you have to pay $11 per banana, maybe $20 per banana. How much can a banana cost, Michael? $20 is now becoming the reality. When you have that conversation with your landlord, practice in front of the mirror, like money is a concept, math. What do these words mean? These are the questions that we're going to be tackling today, because maybe the value of the dollar is not so valuable. Maybe money is not so important. Who knows? Who knows what will happen? Maybe we should read Grapes of Wrath again, because it seems like that's where we're going. Let's start off by talking about how tariffs work. Or no, instead, let's start off with Donald Trump. Yesterday was Liberation Day. Libertad. The day of Libertad. Donald Trump finally came out and said, hey, enough is enough. America, after being at the forefront of developing a complex network of supply chains that simply benefit the American consumers in a way that completely eviscerated the American working class, in a way that only benefits American capital owners, so that they can constantly chase profits overseas by manufacturing goods and products and commodities overseas and completely gutting the American middle class and the American working class, leaving them in destitute circumstances. Donald Trump said, enough is enough. We ate good with global trade, with free trade for quite a long time, and we want to eat even better somehow. But because I have no solutions, I've decided I'm going to put tariffs on every country on the planet, with notable exceptions: North Korea, Russia, and, well, Iran got 10%, I believe. But North Korea and Russia, I believe, are two countries that didn't get it. But also, we don't really do any fucking trade with them, so I don't think that's all that impactful. But Donald Trump, Big T, the T-Dog, the T-Man, he said, tariffs galore. It's the most beautiful word in the language. It's the most beautiful word for the most beautiful world and the most beautiful girl. Tariffs. That's right. Let's take a look at the tariffs that were placed upon Penguin Island and McDonald's Island. Places where we have a tremendous trade deficit with. Now, why am I talking about trade deficits? I'll get to that. I'm spoiling it. Let's talk about this first.
With President Trump's new tariffs, take a look at this map. It shows the countries targeted by the president's trade war. Markets around the world are responding this morning. Our own market here is facing much, much lower.
Yeah, and there is serious concern about the potential shockwave through the global economy and to American consumers' bottom line. We'll be breaking down the potential impact, but first, let's go to our senior political correspondent, Rachel Scott, at the White House. Good morning, Rachel.
Also, I forgot.
Michael, good morning to you. These tariffs impact will be widespread, a move that will not only reshape the U.S. economy, but could also shatter relationships with our closest allies as businesses and companies prepare to raise prices on everything from clothing to groceries.
I can't tell. Is this good? Don't forget Mauritius. What do we even buy from them? What about Cambodia? What about Cambodia? What are we doing? Every country got slapped with a tariff so bad that countries that got 10%, like Turkey, were like, okay, he likes us. Donald Trump is behaving like an abusive husband, okay? Donald Trump is behaving like an abusive father, beating the shit out of everybody, okay? And the ones that only get the backhand one time are going, oh, he must like us a lot. That's the situation in front of us right now. That's what's going on.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day.
This morning, President Trump dramatically escalating his global trade war, announcing his most sweeping set of tariffs yet on goods from every country that trades with the United States.
This will be indeed the golden age of America. It's coming back.
The president declaring a national emergency and putting into place what economists are calling the highest tariff since the early 1900s. Starting this morning, a 25% tariff is now in effect on all foreign cars. That could raise the price of new vehicles by more than $6,000. Then on Saturday, a 10% tariff on nearly all foreign imports. Roughly 60 countries, including some of America's closest trading partners, will face even steeper tariffs. A 20% tariff on products from the European Union, and an even higher 34% tariff on products from China. The president saying it's all in response to what other countries are imposing on the U.S.
If you want your tariff rate to be zero, then you build your product right here in America, because there is no tariff if you build your plant, your product in America.
But experts warn those tariffs will only lead to higher prices on everything from groceries to clothing, iPhones to cars. Some analysts say in a worst-case scenario, it will cost close to $1,800 for every American, $7,200 for a family of four.
They're going to touch everything from going to the grocery store to going out to restaurants to even having to go to places like the movie theater.
Patrick Cumrow owns an...
I'm being so for real when I say this. The entire thing that holds American society right now together is treats and the affordability of treats and basic goods, okay? When that goes away, Americans, I think, which are otherwise incredibly servile and also brain rotted with peasant mindset, will actually riot, okay? I think Americans will riot like the French did. If their treats are that expensive, if their food is that expensive, and then paired up with like obvious layoffs that come through, recession, or the Great Depression, the greatest depression of all, cheap commodity consumption is the real riot tax in this country beyond the marginal benefits that you can potentially claw through the welfare structure. I'm telling you, this is huge. But it's also a complicated situation because as someone who is not a free trade advocate, okay, I'm in this unique mindset where I have to clarify some positions as I did yesterday, and I will talk about that as well. But of course, the MAGA cultists have basically started doing this. They've started. You do not need the new iPad. You do not need the new cell phone. You do not need the new video game console. You want them. There's a big difference. And if you look at the people whining about the tariffs, I challenge you to ask them how their lives have been affected in any way. This right here would lead to someone getting assassinated if it was like a leftist saying this under Joe Brandon. And some did. Some did say this. You know what happened to them? Joe Brandon lost. Kamala Harris lost. This is psychotic. They went with what's his face? The Vibe Session guy mindset so fast. Like the tariffs haven't even hit yet, and this motherfucker's already defending the price increases. Amazing. I love that. I love that so much. It is fucking hilarious. Okay? This has real first Trump era COVID is about to hit vibes, okay? This moment right here is a very unique one. Donald Trump yesterday said this is a historical moment. I agree. It kind of feels like we are at the precipice of something very interesting. It kind of feels exactly the same way that I felt right around when people started taking COVID a little bit more seriously, when we were like, wait a minute, a lot of people are kind of dying. What's going on here? What is this? Is this an issue? That's what it feels like. Like it feels like we're at the precipice. Okay. Now, who knows what will happen? Well, I have some ideas, I have some opinions, and I will get to that. But the short and sweet of it all, free trade is ass. Free trade is horrible for the domestic manufacturing output, the labor in this country, and it's also predicated upon the consistent domination of the global South in an effort to have much cheaper slave labor elsewhere. Without that, maybe you could actually arrive at a theoretical free trade through currency exchange rates and things of that nature. But without imperialism, maybe you could have some semblance of free trade. Understandable, because then if everyone's material conditions are elevated to a degree where there's a price parity and there's a parity and an equilibrium, a benefits parity, if you want to call it that, then obviously there could be some semblance of free trade. But with imperialism, there is no real free trade. Free trade is, of course, a mechanism to displace the domestic labor and outsource it. And it was done by American business owners, people like Donald Trump. Make no mistake. When Donald Trump says these other countries are fucking us over, not anymore, he's lying to you. He's trying to hit a nationalist angle here, but it's the fucking American business owners that wrote the book. It's American capital that wrote the book. It's American capital that gladly shipped those jobs overseas. Make no mistake. When Donald Trump says, oh, it's China, they're fucking us up, he's lying. He is lying. It's ridiculous. Global trade is a necessity in this day and age, okay? I don't have an issue with that. I'm not a trade isolationist across the board. I am not a firm and committed believer in Marxist-Leninist Judaist ideology, okay? Having said that, what Donald Trump did yesterday, he said it was past presidents and our government, you idiot. No, you are the idiot, because you don't understand. It is not our past presidents and our government. It is American capital owners that betrayed the American working class. Shut the fuck up and listen to the adult in the room who's explaining to you. Because guess what? All of those free trade agreements would be meaningless if American capital owners were like, yeah, no, I'm not going to actually move manufacturing to become more competitive in the global marketplace. Move manufacturing overseas, offshore labor like that. Through the government and trade negotiations, ain't nobody made your father's boss move the factory to fucking China at gunpoint, okay? They did that voluntarily. They wanted that to happen. That's why they wrote the fucking rules. You are wrong. You're wrong. I'm shaking you. I'm shaking you like a baby until you are no longer wrong. And as is the case with American antitrust, as is the case with everything in the United States of America, it yielded tremendous profits for corporations, for the super wealthy, a mass consolidation of wealth and power at the tippy top. Having said that, it also came with cheap consumable items, cheap commodities. So consumers were servile. Consumers were made to not realize how devastating this was for their future, for the future of the economy. That's it. But make no mistake, it was entirely done by wealthy businessmen. They wanted it and they got it. So for Donald Trump to say this is previous administrations, this is China, you're wrong. It's the very same super wealthy people right now that are still in power and have become even more powerful in the consequence of this, okay? Those were the villains that conducted this operation. And the American government led this process of global domination, led this process of international markets favoring the American consumer base in the short term, while directly displacing the labor force, which would have genuine material harm, genuine consequences for the American economy in the long term. And we are now living in the ashes of that. That's why I talked about the difference between looking at Chongqing 30 years ago in China versus now on a trajectory of growth and prosperity versus a place like Gary, Indiana, or Detroit, which is on a downward trajectory. Oh boy, why did he get banned? I don't know. He might have just gotten, no, he just got timed out by Toxic SJW, who didn't want to hear this person. But I untimed them out. Anyway, so I need you all to understand cheap televisions and cheap consumer goods gave Americans the feeling of wealth. And because of endless domination overseas, specifically on the global south, unequal exchange of the global south, Americans, comparative to the living standards of the global south that were being dominated, were better off for sure. They were better off. Having said that, however, wealth is still relative domestically. You match it against those, you match those who have not against those who do have it, right? And in that process, I think wealth disparity grew tremendously in this country. And now we are in this predicament. And the only way out of this predicament, ironically enough, is to be China. Is to, efendim baba, okay, is to do China, is to literally have industrial trade policy, nationalization of key sectors, boosting manufacturing, a federal jobs guarantee, a federal jobs program. That's how you're supposed to get out of this, with central planning. You're secretly excited about this all, don't lie. No, I think that, I mean, this is a situation where I think Americans will break away from, this is a situation where I think Americans will break away from Donald Trump, regardless of what these fucking freakish, cultish losers are saying, because you can't make someone, through the cult mentality, you can't make someone believe that they have more money in their pocket. If they feel it, they feel it. Okay? Oh, dude, China like removed term limits for their premier like what Xi Jinping did? Yeah, ironically enough, that question you're presenting is exactly what we are doing. We're doing the bad parts of Chinese governance and not the good parts of Chinese governance. America already had a surveillance state. It is accelerating. America, at the very least, cared about like a theoretical free speech. It's eroded. We're moving in the Chinese direction in all the worst ways, in all the wrong ways, and not moving in the Chinese direction in all the best ways, in the right ways. Even development, rapid urbanization, massive infrastructure projects, massive infrastructure expenditures. This is the problem. That is the issue. Because people ask, like, what's next? How do we get out of this? How do we get out of this rut? And the reality of the matter is you only get out of this rut with serious government investment. That's the only way to get out of this. You cannot rely on the capital owners that put you in this fucking place, put you in this problem to begin with. You cannot rely on the magnanimous nature of capital owners. You cannot bully them through tariffs to boost manufacturing domestically. That process will take far too long. You still have to have serious control over that transition. And Donald Trump seemingly is not interested in doing that at all. This is a problem. This is an issue. And I don't think people understand it. The reason why I bring up all this stuff is because I am not anti-tariff. I've never been anti-tariff. I've never been anti-trade protectionism. However, what Donald Trump is doing is not trade protectionism at all. And that is very important. That's important to understand. That's important to address. And we must address it, especially at a time when there's a lot of confusion, because you got Sean Fain, who I love, who I admire, who I think is brilliant, revolutionary, and very very critical of the Trump administration, coming out and saying some of these tariffs are good. And I want to cover that. I want to cover the Democracy Now! Piece that famous Marxist professor Richard Wolff talked and responded to the Sean Fain statements on. I don't think Sean Fain took an L necessarily. I'll describe to you where he's coming from, why he's saying the things that he's saying, because the UAW's official position is that tariffs aren't bad. Free trade is bad. Okay? And we'll get to that in a second. But
Auto repair shop in Glendale, Wisconsin.
Will you have to raise prices for your customers?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
By how much?
I guess the minimum is going to be 25% on all parts.
He worries his business will suffer.
What we see is it kind of freezes.
Why are you not anti-tariffs? No. Make no mistake. I'm anti everything that Trump did yesterday. I am completely against it. And I will tell you why I'm against it. I'm saying I'm not against tariffs on principle. Like, I'm against free trade on principle, especially because as it stands currently, free trade is not actually free. It's not being done. It's not being conducted amongst equal parties. free trade is conducted with the global South. It's called free trade. It's not so free. It fucking hurts the domestic manufacturers, and it hurts the domestic labor force. It only helps capital owners seek out higher profit margins, basically, by offshoring to countries that we have dominated that are going to have a cheap industrial base, an industrial labor force as opposed to ours. It is a mechanism of extracting wealth once again.
Money freezes the willingness for customers to spend because they don't really know the future.
And in North Carolina, a state already hit hard from Hurricane Helene, some business owners say they have no choice but to raise their prices.
It's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when we will have to raise prices.
The president is confident the tariffs will bring jobs and manufacturing to the United States. Some auto workers applauding the move, but acknowledging that could take time.
I don't think it's going to be that long, but we have to be patient and let it happen.
The administration sending a warning to other countries not to retaliate.
This is not a negotiation, it's a national emergency.
Markets around the world tumbled with our allies denouncing the move, some even vowing countermeasures. Democrats quick to point out the president's campaign promise to lower prices for American families, but the president betting big here that this will bring manufacturing jobs.
You know what's funny about all this? If I'm a European leader right now, I'm fucking pissed. Because this entire global trade structure was directly designed by American businessmen and European businessmen as well, but specifically dominated by American businessmen. We built this complex web. We took advantage of this complex web for decades. And now Donald Trump's like, nah, I'm done. I want more in return from you. And the reasons why he's doing this are there's the suggestions that he's making, like what he claims he's doing this for, and what I know is the real reason why he's doing this. And I'll be very honest with you. It's clear. This is to try and decouple the West, specifically the United States of America, from China as the manufacturing hub of the planet. That's it. Okay? This is seen as a matter of national security. This is a national security concern from the perspective of the anti-China hawks in the American government. They understand that if China were to not be so restrained in the future one day and all of a sudden stop the flow of treats to the United States of America, especially as China has implemented initiatives to create secondary markets for themselves, specifically in Africa, developing Africa, and using that as a market to sell to. Like, these are all the Belt and Road Initiative. These are all important steps that the Chinese government has taken because of its grand design for global trade. It in that process of China decided, yeah, you know what, we're just not, you're fucking us over. Okay, no more goods for you. It would collapse the United States of America. It would just collapse it. It would collapse the entire West. And I think that Donald Trump and his advisors recognize that fear and are actively trying to work against it. They're actively trying to bring back manufacturing and claw back some of that capability by force. The problem is they have no vision. They have no conviction. They're squishy and they're backed by capital. So how the fuck do you do that when you try to do that through the neoliberal private-public partnership that you only implement? You can't do it. You can't bring back manufacturing this way. The most you'll do is the CHIPS Act. Ironically enough, what Biden was doing was the extent of what you can do if your vision is stuck within the neoliberal framework. That's it. And without that, without even the CHIPS Act, for example, without actual investments into American manufacturing, there is no world where you can just simply rely on companies going, yeah, let's build our factories here in the United States of America. This is a dangerous prospect for numerous reasons because it will backfire for a couple different reasons. The lack of vision, the lack of Chinese vision, Chinese style central planning vision within the American government will inevitably lead to massive failures. Why? Because without central planning in this process, you're simply relying on foreign investment coming back into the United States of America because they're too fearful of the tariffs or whatever, which is already on shaky ground to begin with. That's number one. Number two, when tariffs kick in, and let's say you do start building factories, you build the domestic manufacturing, you build your output. There is no guarantee that other countries will be purchasing. The trade deficit is what Donald Trump wants to fix. But there's no guarantee that the other countries are going to start purchasing these commodities from the United States of America once it's made in the United States of America. That's number one. Number two, you build the manufacturing, okay? You shut off trade internationally. You shut off trade from China that way because now you have an alternative. You have the domestic production, okay? Great, fantastic. You have the domestic production. No one is going to pay tariffs because no one is going to be purchasing foreign goods. So all of a sudden, the tariff faucet is closed. So it doesn't necessarily make sense on that front either. And more importantly, even in the short term, tariffs will, of course, lead to inflation. What is inflation? It is just a collection of commodities that you track. That's and the prices of said commodities increasing. That's what inflation is. Why? Why will this lead to inflation? Because all of a sudden, every good, what a tariff is, for those of you who don't know, is an entry fee that usually an American importer is paying. Okay? It is not paid by the other country. It's paid by the person who is bringing the good into the United States of America. It's an entry fee that you're paying the American government. So it's a tax that they're paying. But that tax carries over to you, the consumer. How does it carry over to you, the consumer? Because you pay the entrance, you pay the entrance fee for the good that you're shipping into the United States of America, and then that automatically increases the price of the thing that you're selling because they have to keep their profit margins the same. God forbid they eat away at their profits. They're never going to do that. So all of a sudden, the price of the good is higher. Okay, so this is the reason why tariffs, especially universal tariffs such as this one, when applied, turn into a regressive tax, a sales tax, a flat tax. What is a regressive tax? A regressive tax is a tax that harms the working poor a lot more than it harms the wealthy. Because what are you going to do? Not fucking purchase gas? What are you going to do? Not purchase commodities? Not purchase food? No, you can't do that. It's going to break your bank a lot more than it breaks the banks of a wealthy person, a lot more than it hurts the wallet of a wealthy person. It is a regressive tax. It's a sales tax. But because Americans hate the word tax, Donald Trump has been able to expertly apply a sales tax across the board without ever mentioning the word sales tax and how it will increase his taxes on the fucking working poor. That's it. So we're all going to get raises, right? No, you're not going to get a raise. You're probably going to lose your job, as a matter of fact, because as purchasing power diminishes because of inflation, companies will no longer be able to continue growing and be able to hire people, and inevitably will fire people. Layoffs will happen, which will accelerate the lack of purchasing power in the country. It will cripple the economy, and you will go into a depression. A great one! A great depression! And this has happened in the American past, in the not so distant American past, as a matter of fact. So on the one hand, I wanted to make sure that you understand that I am not necessarily anti-tariff. I am not necessarily anti-trade protectionism. I think trade protectionism can be good, especially when there is a domestic competitive industrial force that already exists in the country, so they can quickly accelerate production. For car manufacturers, for example, this very much exists. For the UAW, for the American car manufacturers, this is seen as beneficial. However, the issue here is, as it has happened in the past, when Donald Trump did tariffs before on other goods last time around, and as tariffs have been implemented in the past, domestic manufacturers will also increase prices. So unless, and this is the last part of the problem that I was explaining earlier, unless there is price caps for American domestic manufacturers coming from a competent administrative state that actually wants to boost domestic manufacturing without making the American consumers incur that cost, they have to do price controls. But they will never do that And this is precisely why historically, whenever tariffs happen, American manufacturers also increase their prices, as they did during COVID, regardless of supply and demand. This can only be done because of the tremendous amount of corporate consolidation that took place. Greedflation would not exist if there was at least a regulatory apparatus that stopped companies from behaving in these ways where they're like, well, you have more purchasing power. I'm just going to increase my prices. And it seems like, you know, you'll yell, but not at me. You'll yell at the fucking government. Great. Okay. My profit margins will go higher and higher year over year. It's fantastic. Do you understand the problem here? Do you understand why this will abso-freaking-lutely increase prices? Because not only does this immediately increase prices for all goods that you purchase that are being imported into this country and all the raw materials necessary for even domestically manufactured goods, as a matter of fact, there's a lot of that as well that will increase the prices of even domestically manufactured goods. But outside of that, domestic manufacturers will also increase their prices because now there's market demand for it. Now everyone else's prices are higher. Why should you make less profits? Because once you recognize that under capitalism, there is never, ever going to be a moment where those with the fiduciary responsibility of constantly improving their profit margins for their shareholders, people that are legally bound to constantly improve shareholder value, will always increase the profit margins to the best of their ability, always improve shareholder value to the best of their ability. Then you start recognizing that they will never have an incentive to reduce the profits. They will never actually keep prices stable unless they're forced to keep prices stable. And a country like the United States of America has never done that, with the exception of Nixon, I guess. And Trump is certainly not the guy, I think, that will do that. This is why prices are slated to fucking explode. That's it. Meanwhile, President Donald Trump has said the market is going to boom. And boom it has. And boom it has. Now let's watch Time doing how tariffs work from 2 months ago. Hopefully this will be a quick and short explainer for you.
U.S. manufacturers make cars for $100, and they are selling briskly here at home. But the Chinese enter the market. They set their prices at $75. U.S. cars don't sell as well. The government decides to help the U.S. car makers, and they slap an 100% tariff on Chinese car imports. The companies that do the importing pay the tariff to the government. They typically raise the price of their products to cover it. Now, cars from China cost $150.
Yeah.
Consumers flock back to U.S.-made cars,
And even if China goes, all right, we'll lower the prices of our cars even further to help out the importers, okay? Even if they say, we'll help out the prices, we'll help out on our end, the tariffs are usually so high that Chinese cars, once they do enter the American marketplace, because of the profit incentive from the importers, the middleman in that situation, they will still not be able to compete with American manufacturers. However, the way that this works is once the Chinese cars on the marketplace are $150, these cars don't stay at $100. They go up to $125. Sometimes they also go up to $150. Do you understand? Because the same incentive structure, the same profit motive exists for the domestic manufacturers as well. So they take advantage of the market and they also increase their prices.
All is good again. China may even open plants to build cars in the U.S., adding U.S. jobs to avoid the tax. But China likely retaliates and slaps tariffs on U.S. goods, making them more expensive overseas and hurting U.S. exports in different industries. Increased demand for U.S. cars and a lack of competition from other manufacturers may motivate U.S. car makers to raise their prices too. The market becomes less efficient and innovative.
Yeah, this last part is just, to a certain degree, this last part is obviously, how do I put this? It's pro-capitalist. And capitalists love free trade, and capitalists, of course, hate any kind of trade protectionism. There are obviously short-term negative pressures on the market for sure when any kind of trade protectionist policy is implemented. Okay? This is correct. Price increases is what I'm talking about for sure. Having said that, if America and the American government did have a genuine interest in boosting American manufacturing, then they would have to, one, build the industrial base before they made these initiatives and plan for long-term prosperity in the same exact way that the Chinese government has done for the past couple of decades, and is the reason why the Chinese government has been able to outcompete every other country and their own domestic manufacturers. You can't compete with BYD because BYD is getting funded by the government. That's it. As long as Chinese government subsidies exist, they can behave in a way like Amazon does with predatory pricing to outcompete everybody else. Because state subsidies with no real interest in improving profit margins, because every company is still ultimately controlled by the state, can be wielded like a weapon to eviscerate the American and European markets. Okay? Wait, you're admitting it? What do you mean? There's no admission here. This is just reality. This is analysis of what reality looks like. It's not a secret. It's also something that I want. You're admitting it's unfair trade practices? It's not unfair trade practices, dumb fuck. It's only unfair trade practices because America can't fucking compete. What are you saying? We also subsidize our agricultural output, for example. I think it's significantly less fair when the United States government dominates a country and incentivizes them not to produce their own agricultural yields and instead makes them poorer and poorer as a consequence, and simultaneously offer them our subsidized agricultural output instead. That's unfair. What China is doing is competing in the global market. China understands the game and plays it too well, and you're like, oh, it's unfair. They're dunking on us too much. Subsidize single industry and keep prices low, bankrupt all other companies in the industry, not unfair. My friend, that's a government. You're just coping because our government won't do that. I'm saying our government should do that. Hello? You're mad that America set the rules of the game and China is fucking dunking on us. It doesn't make any sense. And I'm literally talking about teaching America how to dunk. And you're like, no. Don't teach America how to dunk. Let's just put tariffs. If that is not unfair, then what's wrong with America giving free food and clothing into a third world country, destroying their local industry? Because the over-reliance on free food and clothing for the global south comes from what America did prior to that. Okay? China did not do that to America or Africa. Do you understand what I'm saying? We dominate these countries and then we make them reliant on our free agricultural output that we subsidize on our end. We do it so that our farmers can make a living. We do it so that those countries never develop their own agricultural output. That is infinitely less fair than China being like, all right, you think China isn't doing this on purpose? Wait, what? I don't think you understand, man. I don't think you understand what I'm explaining to you. Okay? I don't think you understand what I'm explaining to you at all. You are not comprehending anything here. China is competing against countries that are more powerful than it, because they are able to use the profit incentive backed capitalist liberal democracies and their lack of interest in dominating private corporations or controlling private corporations against them. America is doing that, on the other hand, to significantly poorer nations that we have kept poor, that we have robbed blind. He's running circles around you intellectually. I know he is. Yeah, if you're the stupidest person on the planet, then yeah. Why Twitch is recommending me terrorist propagandists? I don't know. Is there like a pro IDF account on here that Twitch is recommending to you? Is that what's going on, chatter? Why is our government allowing this? Because the American government has always been a proto-capitalist nation and then a hyper-capitalist nation. And everything that the American government has always done has been to protect the profit incentive and protect the bottom line of corporations. That is precisely the reason why the American government has done this in perpetuity. That's it.
Stephanie Ramos, you are at the port in Newark, where goods are shipped from all over the world, billions of dollars worth. Good morning, Stephanie.
Good morning, Rebecca. As you know, this port brings in hundreds of billions of dollars worth of goods each year from China, Vietnam, and other countries around the world. But those items are likely about to get more expensive. For years, Vietnam has been the go-to for companies trying to dodge U.S. tariffs on China. But starting April 9th, President Trump is rolling out a 46.
China is extracting value in unequal exchange in Africa, though. China didn't make Africa the ripe, exploited ground that it is. Western powers did. China simply, once again, is out-competing the Western powers, offering loans without the conditions that the IMF and World Bank have placed upon African nations. You are just mad that you can't compete against China. And it's funny because you're nothing. You're just like a normal guy like me. We have no say in this process, and we don't even fucking reap the rewards of this process. And here we are defending the American and the Western Empire's decisions. Like, what the fuck is this? It's just pure Western cope. And it's funny because that cope that you're demonstrating is old cope. It's cope from 10 years ago. Foreign Policy magazine and The Economist don't even agree with this assessment now, because even they are like, yeah, we have to take a closer look at the ways in which the IMF and World Bank have operated, because Chinese lenders are offering loans and even fucking eviscerating that debt in a moment's notice. And it's significantly better. And they're doing that to enter these marketplaces. And they're doing that so that they can actually develop these marketplaces, so they can actually sell to these marketplaces. China is in the process of developing a secondary market in Africa. That's what they're doing. They're trying to generate new customers. America, on the other hand, and Western powers, on the other hand, have never treated Africa in the same way. And that is precisely the reason why China can get to do that. Oh yeah, China's extracting mineral resources from Africa, which they use to build more value-added products to sell back to them. China will never give up their IP and tech to give African countries the technology that would actually allow them to climb the economic ladder. Again, the age-old adage once again comes true in the chat over and over again. Like, this person does not work for the Atlantic Council, and yet here he is repeating the same fucking sentiment, even though he's just like a random dude. What's it to you is the question that I ask, especially as America and the American government right now is destroying your fucking future, destroying your prospect for ever retiring. And you're over here still giving lectures about China. Age-old adage, once again, when China comes here, they build a hospital. When the Westerners come here, they give us a lecture. That's it. That's what you're doing. That's all you got. All you got is this. And it's funny because you're not even a Western diplomat. You're not working for the IMF. You're not working for the Atlantic Council. And here you are repeating shit that you read. It does not make any sense to me whatsoever. I don't understand it. Yeah, I mean, we've already covered this. Whenever China comes, they build a hospital. Whenever America comes, they bomb our hospital. Okay, that's different. That would be the MENA region. China would never be able to take advantage and develop these new relationships with African countries if it wasn't for the West's evisceration of African nations and consistent exploitation, hyper exploitation of African nations. You understand that, right? They look like they're wonderful liberators in comparison to the Western Empire and the forces that have dominated and kept African nations poor. In the words of Parenti, you don't rob a poor man, you rob a rich man. It's not like Africa and African nations are poor across the board. They are actually resource rich. They're rich in labor power. They're rich in resources. It's just that they have been robbed blind. and purposely kept underdeveloped by Western forces. They're overexploited. In any case, let's continue.
6% tariff on imports from there, possibly bringing a major price hike for many popular products. So let's say you want to buy a $30 shirt made in Vietnam. If the business passed on the entire cost of the tariff, that $30 shirt just became $43.80. Brands.
I mean, that's insane, dude. And that's everything, because we designed global trade this way. We did this. It's so funny when you got working class chatters in here who are still trying to defend Trump's decisions, and they don't even realize that, like, you are going to be paying for this increased sales taxes. That's what this is. I don't think this is a move that Trump has made in an effort to shred the free market policies that have taken place, the complex global trade. I think it's not trade protectionism to boost domestic manufacturing, but instead to decouple the United States from its over-reliance on China and other countries within the sphere of influence of China that America and the Western nations have relied on for far too long for cheap consumer goods. But because there is no vision there to boost domestic labor and boost domestic manufacturing, that this is just simply a fucking additional sales tax that you're paying for. And you're defending it. You're defending it because of a guy who is from a class that literally did this to you and ruined this country's economy in perpetuity, is telling you, actually, it's good that you're paying the sales tax because somehow, somewhere along the line, it's going to fix itself. It's hilarious. It's ridiculous. It's fucking peasant mindset. My lordship, I will give you more. The rest of the peasants are withholding grain from you, my lordship. I will make up for the demand. Take my wife. Prima nocta, your grace.
Like Nike, Hasbro, even Apple have shifted some of their production to Vietnam to avoid U.S. tariffs on China. But Nike could face a big blow. The company produced 50% of its footwear and 28% of its apparel in Vietnam in its 2024 financial year. And here's another big change. Popular cheap brands like Shein and Temu will face steep tariffs for the first time as the White House ends an exemption preventing tariffs on small dollar shipments from China. So what can you do? Well, first check the labels. See where your favorite products are made and consider buying from elsewhere. And if you're on a budget, consider buying secondhand. It's a really great way to avoid these new tariffs and be more sustainable too. But with the changes coming, this could really reshape everything you wear, from your shoes or even the toys that your kids play with. So get ready for a shift. Michael.
Yeah, you're right.
Oh, get ready for a shift, all right. Breaking news. Trump asked point blank about stock market plunge following tariff announcements. Let's see how he responded.
Golf tournament at Doral. I'm speaking tonight for charity.
This cocksucker is going to a golf tournament. Oh my God. Are you fucking joking? Ain't no fucking way. Are you kidding me? Dude, no. Dude, if you are a Republican and you voted for this man and he just gutted your nest egg for a fucking retirement that you will never have, and then turns around, and he turns around, he's like, I'm going to a golf tournament, baby. Everything is grocery. Everything's computer. And you're like, that's right. That's my heaven-sent president right there. He's got the heavens mandate, brother. If you don't understand that he's fucking you and not even doing it in a way where he, like, shelters you from the impact. He's just fucking you and saying, what are you going to do about it? If you can't comprehend that this man is give it, yeah, Tsar Nicholas, exactly. It's giving Marie Antoinette, but instead of let them eat cake, which is, you know, maybe falsely attributed to Marie Antoinette, whatever. I'm not going to get into that, but if you don't understand, he's doing let them eat cake, but instead he's like, I'm just gonna golf. Fuck you. If you can't comprehend what's going on here, you are so stupid. Oh my God.
And then we'll be coming back here pretty quickly, but having a big event and a lot of charitable causes are involved. So we look forward to that. It's in Miami at Doral. I think it's going very well. It was an operation, like when a patient gets operated on, and it's a big thing. I said this would exactly be the way it is. We have $6 or $7 trillion coming into our country, and we've never seen anything like it.
Oh,
the stock is going to boom. The country
It's gonna boom. It's gonna boom. 5 booms. You know, like 9/11, lots of booms. Stock market is getting hit just like 9/11. Big booms.
It's going to boom, and the rest of the world wants to see, is there any way they can make a deal? They've taken advantage of us for many, many years. For many years, we've been at the wrong side of the ball, and I'll tell you what, I think it's going to be unbelievable. The thing that people have to talk about, we're up almost to $7 trillion of investment coming into our country, and you'll see how it's going to turn out. Our country's going to boom.
Yeah. So the Dow is down 16, 15, down almost 200 in the last 2 years. I just don't understand why. I was looking forward to hearing from Asmongold today, and it kind of it disappoints me that he's not live today to talk about how based this is. You know what I mean? Yeah. Well. I really thought he was going to be popping off talking about how based. It's based. Chat. You don't understand. You're Asmon's biggest fan? I am his biggest fan. I think he is my North Star. He is how I try to comprehend what like the MAGA base and what their feelings are on any given day. Without him, I feel lost. I feel rudderless. Do you see what I'm saying? Like, oh, it's the golden age. Yeah. Asmon's on his way to a golf tournament. Yeah. Fuck around and find out, chat. Yeah. He's like a guiding star, always there in the sky, and if you get too close, you'll die. Yeah. The only thing I don't understand, if he wants to decouple from China, wouldn't he say so? He's honest like that. I mean, he has been saying it. He's been saying it already. He's saying that like it's China is cleaning our lunch money, they're stealing from us. Very unfair. I mean, also, this is, to be honest, Asmon has the most honest takes. Don't be a sheep. Yeah, no, totally. Honest takes. Like, yeah, trans people. Yeah, titties in video games. USAID came after boobs in video games. Yeah, and I hate it. That's why I think it's all right. We should destroy it. Yeah, I'm going to go on like Ash Ketchum. I'm going to go on one of these immigration hunts. Yeah. How do you... All the supposed free thinkers just completely lost in the sauce, thinking that Donald Trump signing off on fucking no more trans women in sports is actually a real initiative. Meanwhile, your pockets are getting fucking cleaned out. You dumb fuck. He is distracting you, okay? And anyone that says that's based is also participating in that distraction. Whether they care about it or not doesn't matter. Inadvertently or directly, they are playing a role in you losing out on what the actual things that will impact their life look like. Trans people have no control over your lives. They are not at the fucking the executive boards of BlackRock, okay? It's not an undocumented migrant that is fucking you over. An undocumented migrant is not your landlord, okay? They're not your boss. But every single moment that you hyper focus on that shit is a moment that these guys can just steal from you. And they are. That's it. You might think you might fancy yourself to be open-minded or woke on what the fuck's really going on, but you've deluded yourself. You're being sheepdogged into a country that will yield worse outcomes for you. I mean, look, these are the shepherds, dude. Look. Where is it? Like, look at this fucking asshole. Where is it? Quarter chicken pounder with McNuggets. Where is he? Where the fuck is it? I guess I closed it, but Quarter Pounder's tweet comes to mind being like, oh, you don't need those goods. You don't need to buy things. You don't need to buy cheap shit. Who cares, you know? Also, I've never said Asmongold is stupid. He's smart enough to understand what the audience demands. He just feeds it to you and you eat it. You eat it every day. You eat that slop every day without realizing that you're being fucking sold on a future that's worse from previous generations. But because Trump and those who hype up Donald Trump can touch on those things that you've been conditioned into fucking hating so expertly, you don't realize when this shit's happening. Yeah. Do you remember like maybe 24, 36 months ago when guys like this were saying inflation caused by Joe Biden leading to expensive groceries and goods were human rights violations? These guys were wringing their fucking hands when people made fun of them about treats. And here they are doing the same fucking argument now. Who's the guy in response to the quarter chicken pounder tweet? Wait, hold on. It's this guy. It's this. Wait, where is it? 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 Here. It's this, chatters.
This is how Schwab, and I dare to say, you must give more of your rights away. Your sacrifice is the only remedy for the real pandemic. We must prepare an angrier world as Agenda 2030 is unfurled. You will eat the bugs sitting in the metaverse. You will comply, and it will get worse. Are you ready for the new world order? Human rights order.
These are the same people that cry because they couldn't go to Outback Steakhouse for 4 weeks. Yeah, they're doing the same shit. They're doing the same shit, which I will address and I will get into in a little bit. But let's keep looking at the glorious stock market crash. Okay, stocks are plummeting. Are you ready for the new world order?
Now we begin with the breaking news from Wall Street. Trading has been underway now for just about 30 minutes, and nervous investors, very nervous investors, are weighing in on President Trump's historic new global tariffs. The early assessment, deep concerns. Almost all goods entering the United States will face a new tax of at least 10%, and that means inflation-weary Americans will see even higher prices on virtually everything. And that adds to the deepening concerns among economists that the U.S. and indeed much of the world may be on a collision course with a recession. Let's begin this hour with CNN business and politics correspondent Vanessa Yurkevich. She's in New York watching all of this unfold. So Vanessa, where do the markets stand right now?
Wolf, markets are tumbling as investors are really digesting worse than expected tariffs. You have the Dow, the NASDAQ, and the S&P all down below, as you can see there, 3%. Retail stocks in particular really selling off. Nike, Adidas, Lululemon, these are companies that source a lot of their goods from abroad, countries that are now under higher tariffs. And just look at the countries that were hit in yesterday's announcement. You have the European Union, 20% tariff. You have Japan, 24%, China, 34%, and Vietnam, 46%. Key trading partners to the U.S. Investors are worried what this means for businesses and then, of course, those businesses' profits. But let's just reset. What do we know right now? We know that there are auto tariffs in effect right now. But coming on Saturday is that 10% universal tariff on Wednesday, higher tariffs on about 60 countries, tariffs on auto parts, foreign auto parts on May 3rd, and then maybe coming additional tariffs on lumber, semiconductors, and I'll add copper there as well. And as you mentioned, Wolf, there is talk of what this could mean for a recession. I just spoke to an analyst who says that the longer that these tariffs stay in place, the more likely that there will be a recession. We also heard from Mark Zandi from Moody's Analytics, who said if they follow through, if these tariffs go into effect, I'd buckle up and brace for impact. A recession seems more likely than not. Wolf?
All right, Vanessa Yurkevich in New York for us. Thank you very much, Pamela.
Well, Wolf, the White House and Republican lawmakers concede that the ripple effect of the tariffs will cause some pain to Americans. But the White House says it's the initial cost to revive manufacturing jobs in the U.S.
Too much winning. You'll say, Mr. President, we've done enough winning. Please, we no longer want to win. We no longer want to win again. Too much winning. I'll say, no, you'll keep winning.
Here's what the vice president said this morning.
For 40 years, we've had an economy that rewards people who ship American jobs overseas and raises taxes on American workers, and we're flipping that on its head. We're going to cut taxes for American workers and for American companies that build here. We're going to make it harder to ship American jobs overseas. It's a total shift in the way that we've done economic policy in the United States of America, but it was necessary.
Hey, Americans, I know that you've seen your 401ks diminish by like 30%, but have you said thank you yet? Have you said thank you recently? Have you said thank you, Mr. President? Because guess what? When your 401k goes away, that'll only cause you to grind harder. I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for you. Have some respect. Have you said thank you once? I don't hear it.
All right, let's go live now to CNN White House reporter Elena Trina. Elena, what else are you hearing from the administration this morning?
Well, Pamela, it's clear that the White House has been very intentional in its messaging. You know, despite some of the president's defenders, Republicans on Capitol Hill, others who have argued that the president is a pragmatist at heart, that perhaps he would pull back on some of these tariffs, it's clear they were wrong. The president was serious about this. And as Vance just laid out, and as we've heard from other top advisors this morning, he is committed to these tariffs really because he fundamentally believes the United States is getting taken advantage of, and he wants to really break the trading system that has been built over the last 70 or 80 years now and see this realignment. Now, we heard from Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt this morning. She was speaking with CNN. She said that, you know, this isn't going to be a negotiation. This is a national emergency. Listen to how she put it.
The president is firm in his approach, and the president is...
Yeah, J.D. Vance also revealed the second incredibly nefarious side of this, which is that this is like the other purpose for this. I've mentioned this a couple times in the build up to the tariffs, where, you know, when Trump says something and he put his mind to it, like he will do it. And when there's too much backlash, he'll maybe claw it back a little bit and say, I fixed it, even after he broke it, right? But in the lead up to it, I kept repeating, like, there's a couple things that he's going to do here, which is, I think he's trying to abolish income tax, which is insane. It is like one of the only progressive taxation methods that the government has, even though it still tremendously benefits capital owners, because capital owners get taxed at a much lower rate because they get taxed on capital gains rather than straight income, right? They get taxed on capital gains rather than straight income. So this, like, even though there needs to be more work and there needs to be an increase in the top marginal tax rate and also additional taxes on wealth as well, okay, we're moving in the direction of abolishing that and saying, see, we're filling our coffers with tariffs instead of income tax. It's a long-standing Republican project. But of course, if Trump were to do it in the way that Republicans were suggesting initially, he would just say, we're doing a mass sales tax, which will harm the working poor overwhelmingly because it's a regressive tax, instead of having income taxes. But this is a way to package that as though he's like boosting American domestic manufacturing, when in fact it's just a regressive tax that will be slapped up on top of the working class, because the tariffs, the entry fee that corporations pay, will be carried on to the consumer in the form of price increases, leading to hyperinflation. In the process, then they'll shut off income tax, which is a progressive mode of taxation. It's fantastic. Do you think that this is just a stupid person's way to de facto increase taxes without saying they are and selling it as a nationalist project? It's not even a way of increasing taxes across the board. It's a way of increasing taxes on the working poor while cutting taxes even further for the wealthy. It is another wealth transfer. That is what is going on here. That is what's so nefarious about this agenda, because I don't believe that Donald Trump is pro-labor, pro-working class at all. I'm sorry. He has done nothing that shows me that he is genuine about his interest in boosting domestic manufacturing. I think he's simply using this tariffs structure to, one, undermine the World Trade Organization because of the favored nations benefits that China gets. And he wants to decouple trade from China. He wants to claw back as much trade from China as possible and other developing nations as possible, because the Trump administration is, I think, more honest about the death of American empire than neoliberals are. They realize that America is dying, China is dominating, and they want to fight back to the best of their ability in the interim. But I still think it's going to fail, because in order for this to be the American prosperity decade, you would need to ironically do China shit here in America, something that I've been advocating for quite a while at this point. That's what's going on. Donald Trump and his admin understand that China is dominating. And they want to, because they don't like that, and because they're terrified of the prospect of no longer being the hegemonic superpower, they want to claw back as much manufacturing as possible. But because they are allergic to nationalization and initiatives that the government controls and government-funded initiatives that are in the public sector, they will not be able to fix this problem. And all this will work. All this will do is basically yield super profits for the super wealthy once again. That's my assessment here. And that's where I think the UAW's analysis and even, and I'm afraid to say this, like Sean Fain's assessment here falls short of what is actually taking place.
Is ensuring economic stability here in the United States of America. This is a common sense policy. And if these countries wanted to negotiate, if these countries wanted to do what's right, they've had 70 years to do it.
I think, Pamela, the end of her answer there, saying they had 70 years to negotiate, is really key here, because that's the question now. Where do we go from here? We're going to see, as Vanessa just laid out.
Yeah, like Jonah Furman, obviously doing comms for UAW, friend of the show, Jonah. He's great. Says GM moves to increase production of light-duty trucks. GM production increases out of its Fort Wayne plant, according to Reuters. Jonah says, I guess strategic tariffs can work. I wonder if people smirking about other blue-collar layoffs will acknowledge and celebrate this, or just keep defending a broken trade status quo. These guys understandably despise free trade, the free trade agenda and the free trade reign. And Trump is breaking that, but I don't think he's breaking that at the behest of labor. I think he's breaking that in a really stupid way. In a way that Americans would not see the benefit from. In a way where... Wait, hold on 1 second. I generally agree, but I also think that this might also be a pretext for seizing emergency powers. He's actively trying to throw the country into anarchy in order to deploy military domestically. I hope I'm wrong. I don't know about that. Always seems like a catch-22 since we're also moving jobs back to the imperial core. Happy to see more domestic union jobs, but do you think it strengthens the labor movement internationally? I think it raises the share of profits going to labor when multinational corporations have to pay $37 an hour instead of $3 an hour. I just don't think it's going to happen. I think this is going to lead to the American working class becoming even more desperate. And instead of wages increasing, the more desperate domestic labor force will work not for $37 an hour, but instead for $25 an hour. That is what I fear. That is what I worry. I think this is a very optimistic assessment. And it is virtually impossible for me to feel optimistic about a Trump future. That's it. That's what I think.
All of these different countries likely respond and in kind to these tariffs and retaliate. That could further escalate this trade war now. And so that's really the key question. One thing as well, just as we watch the stock market, is that the president has been far less reactionary to how the stock market is in this term, in his second administration, than in his first. We have been told repeatedly now not to see him react to the stock market directly because of this. Instead, he has said repeatedly now that he believes there will be some short-term pain. So I'd keep that in mind as well as we cover this. Pamela?
All right, Elena Treen, thank you so much. Wolf?
All right, Pamela, as we mentioned, analysts now say that President Trump's tariffs will likely plunge the global economy into recession this year. Some countries say they're hoping they can negotiate with the U.S., while others have vowed swift retaliation. Listen.
We had been requesting the U.S. government to review its unilateral tariff measures at various levels, and we are extremely disappointed and regret that such measures have been implemented nonetheless.
Our intention remains to secure a deal. Nothing is off the table.
We will continue to make the strongest case for these unjustified tariffs to be removed from our exporters.
We are going to fight these tariffs with countermeasures,
We are going to protect our workers.
The entire global economy will suffer from these ill-considered decisions.
Stock markets across Asia have already tumbled after President Trump's announcement. Now China has vowed to counter what it calls bullying tariffs by the United States. I'm going to go live to Beijing. CNN's Mark Stewart is on the scene for us. Mark, what kind of retaliation potentially could we see from China?
Right. What do you mean? They're going to do retaliatory tariffs, and your tweet about this? Oh, yeah. China President Xi will meet with European leaders, including France President, Spain Prime Minister, and EU President in Vietnam in the coming weeks amid rising global trade tensions over U.S. tariffs. Europe seeking greater intimacy with China and Southeast Asia to offset U.S. reliance. Gift wrapping a Chinese century of prosperity, accelerating the inevitable demise of American empire, and gift wrapping the Chinese century of prosperity. My biggest mistake was not learning Mandarin. My biggest mistake was not shipping my ass out to China to be doing white monkey jobs out there for decades and setting myself up. It's not too late. I was early to the market with China glaze. Many people yelled at me. Many people freaked out over it. And now many of you will learn this hard lesson. Yeah, this is from the first Trump term. Xi and Trump have afternoon tea at Forbidden City, where Donald Trump shows Xi Jinping his granddaughter speaking Mandarin. She's living my dream. He's living my dream. I wanna sit across the table from Xi Jinping and tell him Ti Shang Tai Yang Hong Ya Hong Dong Dong E Xi Shong De Tai Yang Xi Ma So Dong E Da Ling Da Woman De Xi Feng E Ren Men Fan Shen Dan Xiang Jiao Zhou Zhu Ren Yi Xi Yo E Ya Xi Yo A Ren Men Fan Shen Dan Xiang Zhou Zhou Zhu Ren. That's my dream. That is my dream. That is my destiny. Okay.
It's very good, right? It's smart.
She is her grandfather's little angel. He's also a messenger of U.S.-China relations. Wait, hold on. Hassan is like a toddler who learns a song and performs it constantly. Yeah, performs it well. Xi would deservedly send your ass to camp if you did that. Yeah, okay. Well, I would still be in China if that was the case, though. I think you are meant to help save the United States of America and with it the rest of the Western world, not run to China. I mean, I'm trying, but I don't think people want to hear what I have to say. You're brainwashing us all. I can almost sing it just from how much you do. Depression indicator, Campbell's soup. Oh, man. Yeah. Water soup. Incoming.
Good morning. China says it is ready to fight back, but if this is a war, it's not necessarily revealing its plans about how and when it will strike. It certainly has the option, though, of continuing on the tariff theme by instituting more tariffs, more punishment, specifically targeting American farmers. Right now, China imports a lot of soybeans from the United States. There are existing tariffs. Certainly, China could double down on that. But what's been interesting all day today, China's been very much taking on this diplomatic tone, talking about themes of resolving differences, urging the United States to cancel the tariffs. So it's kind of this wait-and-see mode as this April 9th deadline approaches. There is certainly an economic side to all of this, but there's also a lot of ego involved. Both Xi Jinping and Donald Trump want to look strong on the world stage. As one analyst mentioned to us today, it's the real question of who will fold first. Nonetheless, as you mentioned, this is creating a lot of anxiety, not just here in China, but across the entire regions. Markets are not looking at this favorably. We saw declines across many of the markets in Asia, including Japan, which of course is home to.
Do you know your speed reacts are popping off on Bilibili? They love your takes on China and want you to come. Are they popping off? I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of views on it. I wish there were more views on it. I can't tell how many views it's getting. It's like 17K, 34K. I wouldn't say they're popping off. The first vid has, oh, this is 900,000 views. Oh my God. Wait, 900,000 views, 440,000 views, 420,000 views. Oh my God. Oh my God, I got motion. I got motion on Bilibili. Let's go. Woo! Let's go, baby. Let's freaking go. Oh my God. Oh my God, my dream. My dream. It's becoming a reality. Let's go. Finally. Oh, we are so back, dude. We are so back. It wasn't even plan B. This was plan A, baby. Plan A.
The auto giants, including Toyota and Honda. Wolf.
All right, Mark Stewart in Beijing for us. Mark, thanks very much. Pamela.
And stock markets in Europe also took a tumble.
Let's go to
after
China,
President
man,
Trump
please.
announced-
Oh, dude. Honestly, we got Cuba coming up, and I'm gonna set up China too. We gotta do it. Holy moly, we gotta do it. Oh my God. Oh my God.
Announced 20% tariffs on imports from the EU. So let's go live now to Paris and CNN senior international correspondent Melissa Bell. Melissa, how big of a blow are these tariffs to Europe?
Look, a senior European official has been talking to me just a short while ago about the figures. They were handed this 30-page document yesterday. Europeans are contesting a bunch of the figures. They say that it's full of mistakes. There are things that have been seen applied, tariffs applied to them twice. Overall, what Europeans are saying is that if you look at the last 3 rounds of tariffs that have been applied to them, it is 70% of all European goods that will head to the United States that are now the subject of tariffs. That is 380 billion euros worth of goods. So it's a huge blow to the European Union. And what's interesting is that the Commission is saying on one hand that it's going to seek to negotiate. The high-level negotiations with Washington begin, we understand, even tomorrow afternoon. But at the same time, they're really preparing for a war. They say that they did not start, but that they are ready to wage. And what they say their biggest asset is the biggest single market in the world. So 450 million consumers that they say they're going to protect, but also use in their fight. So things like, for instance, sourcing soybeans elsewhere than the United States, motorcycles, the sort of goods that you would expect them to seek to buy from other partners in the United States. But more than that, the Commission has a bunch of more measures, retaliatory measures up its sleeve that could hurt, for instance, big tech that make, say, Europeans 30% of their profits in the EU. Europeans are preparing to fight back, and to fight back quite aggressively, Pam.
All right, Melissa Bell, thank you. Wolf?
All right, Pamela, let's get some more right now on all the breaking news. Joining us, the New Jersey Democratic Senator Cory Booker. As you know, he just set the record, I should say, this week.
Bro, this is so funny. The Cory Booker stuff fell apart in spectacular fashion because of Trump's destruction of global trade. It is but a mere afterthought now. Like I told you that people weren't going to give a shit about this, but I didn't predict that it would fizzle out, so quickly.
For the longest floor speech in the modern history of the U.S. Senate. Senator, thanks so much for joining us. I want to talk about your marathon speech in just a few moments, but let's get to the breaking news first.
Users on Chinese platforms call you a China anchor, like a pro-China anchor, because I am.
What kind of impact, Senator, are you expecting these massive Trump tariffs?
Wait, you really do have motion? 4K likes, 133 coin dono. Hasanabi, watch speech, Shaolin Temple. I must go to China. 449,000 views, dude. I told you guys that the Hasanabi industrial complex has to also maintain a dominant presence on all Chinese platforms. And I'm glad that people are doing it. I'm glad that people are getting in on it. I hope that the Chinese Hasanabi heads are popping off. As you guys know, I do not maintain IP anyway. I don't care. I'm very Chinese like that. And therefore, go forth and prosper.
What kind of impact do you think they will have on American consumers?
Well, I'm already hearing an explosion of a reaction from across my state, and people from across the political spectrum are angry and upset because they know the impact it's going to have in New Jersey on jobs, on businesses. But for our consumers who are already struggling under a president this last 73 days that said he would cut their costs before he even did this, inflation was going up. Before he even did this, the stock market and people's 401k accounts were going down. Before he even did this, the consumer confidence was down. Before he even did this.
Midas Touch, Brett Cooper, Fox News, Brian Tyler Cohen. Now this impact. Am I even on this? I'm not. I got no motion, man. I got no motion. My channel is dead. Dead. I wonder how many Q1 2025 Midas Touch one got 1 million new subscribers. This is crazy. Pretending to be Chinese after pretending to be Japanese, huh? Caroline, shut up. I never did that. Shh, don't ever repeat that. You take like 5 days to upload, bruh. Lost a Rubin report. I know. All right, let's keep going.
Grocery prices and eggs and
let's
things were
move
going
on.
up. So
This is a very good piece from Richard Wolff, who's going to be talking about the immediate impacts of tariffs and what the sole purpose of these tariffs are, and why the UAW's assessment on it is perhaps a little too hopeful, and maybe perhaps a little too hopeful, and maybe a lot more damaging to the American economy. Let's take a look.
Is Democracy Now! Presenting a 10% prevailed, the biggest hike in global tariffs in modern U.S. history, including a 10% blanket tariff on all imported goods from about 185 countries. In addition, many U.S. trading partners, including the European Union, China, and Japan, will see even higher tariffs. China now faces a total 54% tariff. Trump announced the plan during a speech in the Rose Garden at the White House.
My fellow Americans, this is Liberation Day. Waiting for a long time. April 2nd, 2025 will forever be remembered.
Yeah. By the way, Dow dropped 1,680 in its biggest wipeout since 2020 as fears from fallout from tariff shake markets, and S&P 500 sinks 4.8%.
As the day American industry was reborn.
Yeah, based. Well. Oh, no. I hate when you're right. I'm sorry. Chatter.
The day America's destiny was reclaimed.
Yeah.
And the day that we began to...
Liberation. Yeah.
Make America wealthy again. Gonna make it wealthy, good and wealthy. For decades, our country has been looted, pillaged, raped, and plundered by nations near and far, both friend and foe alike. American steelworkers, auto workers, farmers, and skilled craftsmen, we have a lot of them here with us today. They really suffered gravely. They watched in anguish as foreign leaders have stolen our jobs, foreign cheaters have ransacked our factories, and foreign scavengers have torn apart our once beautiful American dream.
The impact of Trump's tariffs are expected to be felt around the world. While Trump claims the tariffs will boost the U.S. economy, many economists fear it could lead to a recession or worse. Trump's trade war could also shift global alliances as countries seek new trading partners. China, Japan, South Korea have already announced plans to increase trading ties and
Here, I'll play this so
monetary barriers.
I'll play this so you guys, for all the Asmongold refugees, because he's not streaming today, so you don't feel left out, okay? And you can give me notes on whether or not I was able to do a decent one.
5 tariff. Think of that, 2.5% on foreign-made automobiles. The European Union charges us more than 10% tariffs, and they have 20% VATs, much higher. India charges 70%, and perhaps worst of all are the non-monetary restrictions imposed by South Japan. Our Ford sells very little.
Talking about Canada.
But such horrendous imbalances have devastated our industrial base and put our national security at risk. I don't blame these other countries at all for this calamity. I blame former presidents and past leaders who weren't doing their job. They let it happen.
Yeah.
And they let it happen to an extent that nobody can even believe. That's why, effective at midnight, we will impose a 25% tariff on all foreign-made automobiles.
Damn.
Thank you.
Holy shit.
Brian, I'd like to have you come up here for a second, okay? I just see him sitting. He's been a fan of ours, and he understands this business a lot better than the economists, a lot better than anybody.
Bold.
Brian, say a few words, please, would you?
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you. It's a great honor to have you. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. President. I grew up just north of Detroit, Michigan, in my time, plants sitting idle. We support Donald Trump's policies on tariffs 100%, Mr. President.
Or 12 years.
This is remarkable. Dude, if I was Ben Shapiro, I'd be Brian Kilmeeing, dude. It is quite remarkable. Like, his input is just going, over a fucking Trump seminar here. He's putting on a clinic. Ben Shapiro and his nerd ass has to sit there and like defend these decisions. in the nerdiest ways possible, even though he's wrong. And so is Asmongold, but he's wrong in an infinitely more popular way. It's fucking awesome. I want to look at, I wonder if my editors posted my reaction to this already. Let's see how I covered this, if it's out already. It's tariff time. It's Liberation Day, folks.
Tariffs on imported products are taxes
of a recession now?
I did, Steve.
You can, for the most part, see it. Those with good eyes, with bad eyes. We didn't want to bring, it's very windy out here. We didn't want to bring out the big charts because it had no chance. Tariff of 34%. I think
we should have just let it ride. We should have just let it ride. That's the problem here. It is so funny.
Very tough, very, very tough trade.
You can just put any number you want on there once you add those.
European Union, very friendly.
Once you add that as a reasoning, everything is a tariff.
39%. We're going to charge them 20%, so we're charging them essentially half.
Such good input. Yes, it is actually good input because I'm directly undermining what the initiative is here. Okay, that is good input because I'm describing to you why those numbers are incorrect. Next day upload, so delayed. Okay, true.
Taiwan, where they took all of our computer chips and semiconductors. We used to be the king, right? We were everything. We had all of it.
We had all of it.
Now we have almost none of it, except the biggest company is coming in. We're going to end up with almost 40%. Lee Zeldin's working to get their approvals. And it's an amazing company. Mr. Wei, of one of the great companies of the world, actually. They're coming in from Taiwan, and they're going to build one of the biggest plants in the world, maybe the biggest for that. But 64%, we're going to charge them 32%. Japan.
He's out of his mind.
Very, very tough. Great people.
Hey, yo!
And again, I don't blame the people for doing it. I think they're very smart in doing it. I blame the people that sat right in that old.
Why was the Taiwan part driving you crazy? I'm dumb. Because slapping tariffs on Taiwan while recognizing it as a separate state from China is a hilarious thing to do because Taiwan has incredibly important strategic positioning for us. It is the chip manufacturing hub for the Western world, and slapping tariffs on the chip manufacturing hub of the Western world that is slammed in the ass cheeks of China at a time when they would be pushed into reunification over collaborating with the United States of America is idiotic. It not only in the short term destroys the GPU prices and prices of everything pretty much, okay, but also it ruins America's interest. It ruins America's strategic interest in Taiwan because America wants to use Taiwan as a weapon against China. It destroys long-standing American foreign policy. It makes no sense. It undermines the it's the DPP, right? You have the KMT, which is now in favor of unification, ironically enough, and you have DPP, which is in favor of separation. It undermines at the domestic level in Taiwan the influence of the power that the DPP has because now they look like fucking assholes. They look like douchebags. They're like, yeah, no, we have to separate from China. KMT is not in favor of unification. Yes, it is.
You know, we're paying
what
them
do you mean?
Billions of dollars. They're not
the hat on. That's how you know I'm apolitical. Anyway, we should just be ripping the raw reacts, I think, in an expeditious manner. I wonder if that would do better numbers overall instead of trying to effort post and make a highly edited production. You be more normal, man. My boss came in while you were singing the damn China anthem, and now I have a meeting with her and HR on Monday. I'm in Taiwan. I spoke with a bunch of people in the streets, and unfortunately, TSM is not a big part of everybody's mind, so they think of the tariffs as a non-factor. It would be odd if they were the only, if that was the only country that's being slapped with tariffs that don't think of the tariffs as a significant factor.
Coordinate their response to Trump's tariffs. We begin today's show with Richard Wolff, professor of economics emeritus, University of Massachusetts Amherst, visiting professor in the graduate program in international affairs at the New School. He's the founder of Democracy at Work and hosts a weekly national TV radio program called Economic Update, the author of a number of books, including most recently Understanding Capitalism and The Sickness is the System, when capitalism fails to save us from pandemics or itself. Professor Wolff, it's great to have you with us again. Well, start off by responding to, and were you surprised, shocked, or do you guess that, well, about 185 countries were going to see increased or tariffs?
On the one hand, we knew something like this was coming.
On the other hand, the sweep and the scope of it does make you stop. Mr. Trump is right. It is a changing moment in American history and world history. But I think his representation of what's going on is completely fantastical and has only to do with the self-promotion that he is engaged in most of the time. It was never foreigners who did it to us. This notion of the United States as a victim, we have been one of the greatest beneficiaries in the last 50 years of economic wealth, particularly for people at the top just like him. It has nothing to do with foreigners taking advantage of us. This attempt to make himself strong and powerful relative to others, to blame the foreigner. These are cheap shots that a real president wouldn't do. And there's the most important point. The American economy is in trouble. The American empire is in decline. We don't want to discuss it in this country. We engage in denial, and instead we are striking out at other people, a sad way of handling a decline. The British Empire declined before us, so did all the others. We are now at that point. We had a great 20th century. 21st century is different. You have to face those problems. That's not being done. What's being done is to say we have difficulties, but they're all somebody else's fault, and we're going to solve it by punishing them. I would like to point out, as you suggest quite rightly, Amy, that the rest of the world is not going to sit by. The United States does not have the power it had in the 20th century. It is not in the position it's...
I'm sure Trump has a robust reindustrialization campaign plan, and not just tariffs, right? Surely Trump has thought this through. Yeah. Except, given the runway of rebuilding American industrial output, you would have to probably do that years ahead of time before you implemented the tariffs. It would also require a tremendous amount of government power, and considering that Donald Trump is simultaneously undermining expenditures, cutting costs with Doge, and destroying the administrative state, it doesn't seem like they're moving in that direction. This is just breaking things, breaking them fast, with no conceptualization of how we will get out of this problem at all. It would take, at minimum, even if America tomorrow decided to operate like China, central planning, tremendous amount of control over American industry, and decided to implement like martial law style Defense Production Act. Like, there are some tools in the tool belt that presidents can use, right? They do a Defense Production Act across the board. They're like doing eminent domain. They're building this robust network of commerce internally, creating manufacturing hubs and whatnot. Ironically enough, it would still take at least 5 to 10 years to build the underlying infrastructure necessary to become a manufacturing hub in this country. They're not doing that, because you want to know who was doing that, but also doing it in a neoliberal fashion? Joe Biden. That's the irony here. Joe Biden with the CHIPS Act and Joe Biden with like Build Back Better was a watered down version of what is necessary for Trump to do if he were to bring back manufacturing to the United States of America. Both fall short of what is necessary, however, because both are the classic American bind of doing a public-private partnership rather than building all of this stuff ahead of time with government expenses and just controlling these key sectors, maintaining the control over these key sectors in the hands of the government with a federal jobs program, with a federal jobs guarantee. This would require tremendous nationalization. They will not do that. The Brandon administration didn't do that, and it fell short of what was necessary. And the Trump administration is not even doing that and just simply breaking shit. That's it. That's it. It took China, a country with tremendous control over its economy, decades to get to this point. Now, China's material conditions are different than the United States of America, of course. We are a wealthier country, but there are some disadvantages there to being a wealthier country. in terms of like building shit as fast as possible. But capital ownership and control over the government is calcified in this country. They will not stand by and allow any leadership to just say, oh, no, you're done. It's over. Your super profits are done. We are now working on building the American industrial base. It's going to be a decade of prosperity. They won't do that. They'll just assassinate you.
Seems to imagine itself when the Secretary of the Treasury added to Mr. Trump's comments that he warned the rest of the world not to retaliate. That would imply that if they do, there would be escalation. Yes, he said, there will be escalation. Well, nothing will guarantee more escalation than if they do nothing, because then it's an invitation to Mr. Trump to keep doing it as each of these efforts doesn't work.
Given how dramatic this was yesterday, is it possible he was deciding this to the very last second as they put this off? And explain exactly. You're a professor, you're a teacher. Most people don't even realize how tariffs work.
Okay. A tariff is a tax. It's just a particular tax that got that name. It used to be called import duty. All it means is when something comes into the United States that was produced outside and is brought in to be sold, it has to pay a tax, as literally as it crosses our border into our country. It is paid by the American company that brings it in, which may pass it on to the consumer, usually what happens, and the tax goes to Uncle Sam. It goes to Washington. Mr. Trump loved to suggest that tariffs were paid by the others, a little bit like Mexico would pay for the wall. Never happened. It's not going to happen here either. It's an American tax. And there's something remarkable that clues you into how big a change.
Wolf defending neoliberalism? No, he's not defending neoliberalism. I think Richard Wolff is simply defending basic economics and how it works and how it will unfold with the Trump administration's initiatives. Richard Wolff is not a defender of free trade principles. He's not a defender of neoliberal economics. He's just explaining to you what is going to happen. That's it. And he's correct. This is going to happen. It's important for you to understand that this will happen. It's not even like reading the tea leaves. Factually describing systems as neoliberalism. Some chatters are too brain broken to be allowed to type. Exactly. Factually describing a neoliberal system is not neoliberalism. It's just what is happening and what will happen. He is a Marxian economist, chatters.
This is that the Republican Party, which has branded itself as the anti-tax party for a century, is now imposing the most massive tax imaginable. Why this big change? Because we have big, big problems, and this kind of slapping the rest of the world is an attempt to solve a little bit of them, but it is not going to work because we don't have the power to do it anymore.
I want to go to UAW President Shawn Fain, who supports Trump's new tariffs, saying last week, "We applaud the Trump administration for stepping up to end the free trade disaster that's devastated working-class communities for decades." Fain spoke Sunday on CBS's Face the Nation.
We've seen over 90,000 manufacturing facilities leave the United States. We've seen, in the big three alone in the last 20-plus years, 65 plants have closed. And so, look, tariffs aren't the total solution. Tariffs are a tool in the toolbox.
This is very important for people to understand. Just like with rent control is not a solution. Rent control is simply a tool in the toolbox. And if you use only one tool in the toolbox and not the other tools in the toolbox, then all you'll do is break. Let's say inside of your toolbox, you have a hammer, you have nails, okay? You have wood, and you want to rebuild something. If you just use the fucking hammer, then you broke it. Trump, basically, with these tariffs, is simply fucking hammering the shed that existed and not trying to rebuild it at all. The part that I disagree with Shawn Fain on, and, peace be upon him, Shawn Fain, our loyal soldier, okay, I love him, as you guys know, is the part where he is, I think, too hopeful about these initiatives, because Trump very clearly is not using other tools
to get these companies to do the right thing, and the intent behind it is to bring jobs back here and invest in the American workers. If they're going to bring jobs back here, they need to be life-sustaining jobs where people can make a good wage, a living wage, have adequate health care, and have a retirement security, and not have to work 7 days a week or multiple jobs just to scrape to get by paycheck to paycheck.
Well, while UAW President Shawn Fain praised Trump's tariffs, he also said he had great concerns about President Trump's move to eliminate contracts for 700,000 federal workers, the firing of workers at the National Institute of Health and other agencies.
I was a bit disappointed. I like Shawn Fain, many of us do. But this was disappointing. To say, basically, I will support the president because he does something that might help my union, even though Shawn Fain knows, as most economists do, that if you put a tax on the goods coming in, they will go up in price because we have to pay that tax now. And that will lead to domestic producers able to raise their prices because their competitors from abroad are stuck with this tax. So we expect a boost to inflation, which is...
No, this is not internal union politics within the UAW. You're wrong. No. This is a union leader who does stand to benefit from the boosting of domestic manufacturing of cars, especially, defending on principle the breaking of free trade, which has gutted this country's labor force and its manufacturing capabilities. He's not. This isn't like a Sean O'Brien style situation where he's hitting on like the culture war aspect of Donald Trump's administration and talking about that positively, as though that has anything to do with the material realities that are facing the American working class. It does not. And it's also incorrect, I think. Like, his assessment, I think, is probably not going to... His assessment is not going to be true in the long run, or even in the short term.
It's going to hurt the working class of this country in a very serious way, especially if it builds on itself, which often happens when you do tariffs like this.
Yeah,
and
this is important. This is another aspect of this that's important because, hey, guess what? Trump could also implement price controls. You have so many good tags. I don't know why you're against free trade, because free trade is not free. Free trade almost entirely benefits the capital owning class. They have designed trade agreements to literally destroy the American labor force. Free trade would work if, like, basic needs across the board at the international level was met. Free trade is not free. And there was a time and place when Democrats, at least some Democrats, were against this principle. And it's crazy to me that they are the ones who are defending it tooth and nail now. Free trade is not free. It's simply not free. There's no such thing as a free lunch. There's no such thing as free trade. What about the developing world? Please don't come in here with fucking World Trade Organization assessments about how free trade has actually trickled up and have been able to really boost domestic, these global South populations. The only country where it has actually boosted, like the only country where quote unquote free trade policies have actually yielded tremendous bounty is fucking China. That is the reason why, that's the entire reason why Trump is trying to break free trade agreements right now, because they've become a competitor to the United States of America. And the only reason why China was able to do that is not because of the foreign capital entering the marketplace, but instead because they took all of that bounty and engaged in even development and rapid urbanization. No, I'm not going to say India. Are you crazy? India is the greatest example of it not actually working. The reason why it worked in China is not because money came into China. It's because of central planning. It's that simple. You'd make a good teacher for children who like being bullied. And no, it didn't help in Mexico either. It literally didn't help in Mexico until recently, because if you don't have redistributive policies in the nation that is in the nation that's receiving all of this foreign capital, if you don't have a solid approach, if you don't have an approach that has a long-term development project in mind with redistributive policies that focuses on building infrastructure, you don't actually have the Chinese prosperity. Mexico's rise in the last decade comes from the Morena party changing a previous long-standing Mexican policy that didn't do that. The examples that you can use are China or Vietnam, and China and Vietnam, to varying degrees, have similar approaches to this.
I want to remind everyone, including Sean Fain, that the auto workers also represent workers in places that need export markets, that produce in America and sell abroad. When those countries retaliate, as they likely will, we will lose export markets, and that will mean fewer jobs.
Important to remember, China did it while still creating a rich elite class. It's not like they did communism. Every single person, especially in the Xi Jinping period, the rich elite class in China is no different than the idea of like owning your own land in China. It's on a government lease, okay? All of your wealth as a rich elite class member in China, especially since the anti-corruption initiative set forth by Xi Jinping in the last decade, is just simply the government's money that you're holding on to. It's like saying, hey, let me get a whiff of that $1 billion, please. That's it. And there are many examples of the government coming in and seizing your assets. It's no different than the 100-year mortgage that everyone has. Not a mortgage, but like all land is owned by the government. Okay? It is collectively owned in China. When you purchase a home in China, you don't pay property taxes, but you get a 100-year lease, and they usually extend that lease. Obviously, they don't fucking seize it after the 100-year lease is over. Similar structure in Singapore as well. Singapore has other issues on top of that, though, especially with like immigrant labor forces and the two-tier citizenship structure that they have that resembles almost like the UAE slavery, the slave immigration structure. But I'm not going to get into all of that. I'm simply saying, in China, all of the super wealthy and the wealth that they've accrued, especially under Xi Jinping, because this changed a little bit, is directly still controlled by the government. This is precisely the reason why companies like BYD are not operating at the behest of profit margins and improving their profit margins, but can take the initiative, take government subsidies, and offer incredibly low-cost alternatives to the pre-existing domestically manufactured vehicles in European markets. If they were hyper-focused on profits, then they wouldn't be able to do that. They wouldn't be able to sell you EVs, for example, for like $15,000. They'd be like, what the fuck do you mean? This is an incredibly costly vehicle to make.
And no one, let me stress, no one now knows whether the jobs lost from this trade war will be greater or smaller than any jobs that are gained. It is a big risk being taken by Mr. Trump, and if it doesn't go well, it'll be very bad for the American economy. It will produce the recession folks are worried about, because if the prices go up, people buy less, and that loses jobs.
Yeah.
When you look at all of this, this is an incredibly risky effort to blame the world, punish the world, and then cross his fingers, which is what he's doing, hoping it comes out all right. Reminds me of the football metaphor. This is a Hail Mary pass. You throw it down the field. You hope it bounces.
I have no idea what you mean by this point. I'm not going to lie. China is all about profits. Chinese companies are all about profits. They're not different for some reason. BYD can sell cheap cars because the government developed a cheap supply chain. It's not because they're anti-profit. No. My point is, America also heavily subsidizes all of its key sectors. Why is it that America cannot demand lower profits in return for heavy subsidization, whereas China can? Because the Chinese government, let's say, wants to enter by force European car markets. Okay, they want to destabilize the European car markets. America can't do that with Ford in the way that China can do that with BYD. That's my argument. They can say, yeah, you're gonna take a much narrower profit margin when you enter the European marketplaces. Okay, subsidies just replace profits in ways the U.S. won't. That's not true. Subsidies always replace profits. Subsidies also play a role in the profit margins for American manufacturing. What are you talking about? That's what a subsidy is. A subsidy is supposed to make it cheaper for you to produce the fucking good. My point is, BYD can't go, we're going to erroneously increase the price of these fucking markets because they are still operating at the behest of the Chinese government's directive there. Whereas when America does this, it's basically the thing that I describe all the time. In China, the government controls the corporations. In America, the corporations control the government. It's that simple. So when Donald Trump is making initiatives like this, he wants by force for European markets and all these other countries to, by force, purchase American manufactured goods, even if they don't have any need for it, even if they don't want it. They want to fix the trade deficit by force. This is how they want to do it. And in that process, they will never tell the corporations to actually eat away at their profit margins. They will never do that. Do you understand? Whereas China will be like, yeah, no, you're going to have lower profit margins, but this is important for us because we want to enter these marketplaces and destabilize with predatory pricing, what you would consider predatory pricing, in the same way that like Amazon does. Think of China like Amazon. That is what I'm saying. You're agreeing with me. Aren't tariffs a way to increase taxes in an obfuscated way? It's not even an obfuscated way. It's directly what it is. Tariffs are an entry fee paid for by the importers. It's fine to have lower profit margins. The companies are so tied to the broader market. I just don't understand the framing of saying Chinese companies don't care about profits, unless I'm misunderstanding. Chinese companies don't care about profit margins, not profits, profit margins, because they are still operating at the directive of the government. And as long as the government has an interest in entering these marketplaces with much more affordable alternatives, they will follow suit because it is not operating in the normal capitalist dynamic. Companies are not operating in the way that capitalist corporations operate in the United States of America and in the Western world. That's it. And if you don't recognize that, then you can't understand what the fuck's going on or how China got to the place that it got to or the moves that they make. This is no different than looking at ghost cities and being like, lol, these guys just want to improve their GDP by building these fucking stupid ghost cities. And then you go, oh my God, it turns out they weren't ghost cities. Turns out there's people living there now. It doesn't make sense in the short term because you're operating with narrow thinking. You're operating within a capitalist framework. For China and the Chinese state, all they care about is the interests of China. And for them, they will use capitalism to their advantage. That is what they do. And using capitalism to your advantage means that you're not gonna work on maximizing profit. You're gonna work on maximizing market dominance. Governments like the CCP have complex multivariable goals and interests. Companies only care about growth and profit. Because the CCP controls its companies, they can operate with a more long-term minded objective than companies here in America are capable of. Exactly. Therein lies the problem with capitalism. It forces everyone to engage in short-term thinking because you only think in quarterly earnings. This is why I joke and say, American capitalists think in weeks, but the Chinese government thinks in decades and centuries. And it's ironic because in times of need, the American government has actually operated with central planning in mind, whether it be World War II and the economy that the manufacturing output that existed, the manufacturing base that was developed because it was a necessity, and how much that yielded tremendous bounty for America in general in the direct aftermath of that, or even DARPA creating the internet. These are all heavily subsidized, publicly funded initiatives. And it required multiple decades of failure and tremendous amounts of money to be thrown at this project. All technological innovation that has accelerated humankind in really meaningful ways have only come from the public sector for this reason. Because you have the opportunity to fail over and over again because you have a larger project in mind. Whether it is obviously an invention that will allow you to surveil people better, or any number of different things like the space race. A lot of things, we misunderstand a lot of things that China does in the West because we think like, oh, this doesn't make sense from our narrow focus. We look at it and we go, why would they build high-speed rail like this? It's just, it's not profitable. It's going to collapse eventually because it's not supposed to be profitable. That's not the only measure of building out a network that is self-sustaining. You know what else is not profitable? Our fucking highway system. But we built it anyway, and we built it for cars. You know what else is not profitable? The U.S. Postal Service. But it's not supposed to be profitable. It's supposed to be a service. How, in your view, is China distinct from post-war Keynesian consensus besides the more government control over corporations? That's a key factor. And also, no fucking private ownership in that regard. Even if it looks like a private ownership exists on paper, that gives a lot of opportunity to the government. That gives a lot of movement to the government.
This is into your team's hands, but that's all it is, a long shot. And it's a sign of how troubled the American economy now is.
China as a one-party strongman-led country is limited. Once the leader dies, the future is uncertain. This is also wrong. For every other country that has been led by a single-party strongman, you're not wrong. A great example of this is Chavez. Okay? Look at Venezuela now. China, on the other hand, does not have the same issue. While, yes, Xi Jinping is a singular, charismatic strongman force, the Communist Party of China is not as narrow-minded. And the only reason why I say this is because I look at the history of Chinese development over the past couple of decades. There is a unified vision. And while some leaders might move the country in a different direction, the party itself is in control. And the party itself gets their notes from bottom up. Sure, there is still centralized command at the top of it, but they're constantly getting endless amounts of feedback from this vast network of local representatives that get together and make demands that are directly what the people that voted them into positions of power want out of them. There is a robust party infrastructure to replace Xi Jinping. Ultimately, the Chinese government and the Chinese party, input is not power. The people need bargaining power. Dude, look, man, that's great. I don't disagree with you, but input is power. First of all, you're wrong about that. And secondly, it's hilarious to say this from fucking any Western country. Go ahead. Give your fucking input and feedback to your administrators and see how well they listen to you. I'm about to go to the fucking streets of D.C. in 2 days to represent the wishes of the broad majority of Americans that want this endless faucet of money and destruction that is going to fucking Israel to stop, to be put to an end. Do you think they'll listen? It's been 1.5 years. Have they listened? Fuck no. What do you mean?
If you can put this in the bigger picture, talk about the tax cuts and how they fit into...
The majority still supports Israel. That's an incredibly vague statement to make. Supports Israel how? It's not... The overwhelming majority of Americans wanted a ceasefire. Joe Biden literally wanted Israel to continue doing death and destruction so much that he dropped the ball spectacularly. Kamala Harris followed suit and lost the election. You're going to tell me the majority of people aren't brainwashed? No, they're brainwashed in different ways, but they're brainwashed into thinking that, for example, American liberal democracy represents their interests. Good luck getting a fucking robust socialized healthcare network, you know?
To the tariffs, what is it, something like $4 trillion in tax cuts and who benefits, and then talk about the other issues that President Trump keeps saying that they're not going to touch, even though what many call his co-president, Elon Musk, whether he steps back from being, giving speeches or not, going after Social Security, issues like Medicaid.
Let me start with the tax issue. The biggest single thing that Trump did in his first presidency was the tax cut of December 2017. And when that tax cut was written into law, it had a sunset. It expires this year, 2025. If that expiration is allowed to happen, corporations and the rich, who were the big beneficiaries back then, will face a big tax cut. He doesn't want to do that because that's his base, that's his donor support. He doesn't want to have those taxes go back up. Well, then what is he going to have to do? If he keeps on spending and he doesn't let those taxes go back up, he's going to have to borrow trillions, as we have been doing. He doesn't want to be the president who keeps borrowing trillions, in part because the rest of the world is a major creditor of the United States, and they're not going to continue to do it the way they have. So he's in a jam. He has to do something. So his hope is to savage the expenditures in this country. Look what he's doing. Mr. Musk stands there with a chainsaw to give us the clear implication, I'm going to solve the problem on the backs of the working class. I'm firing them all. I don't care what the rest of the working class suffers. I'm going to fire all these people without notice, without plan. Calling this efficient is a silly joke. An efficient process takes time, takes experts. You're not doing that. You're just wholesale firing. Calling that efficiency is an attempt to fool people that shouldn't make any difference. Mr. Trump is now in jam. He can't get out of this without in some way solving the problem that has been built up. And there is no way other than the one he's doing, because it's the last gasp of how to take away from the mass of the people.
Read my last comment. China operates under different incentives, but is definitely often not long-term. I disagree with that statement. It is the most significant difference. Unless you think that, look, there's only two things that you can make assessments on here. Either Xi Jinping has the heavens mandate, okay, and he lucked in to all of this, and the Communist Party of China also has the heavens mandate, and they lucked in to this level of development and rapid urbanization, or they actually are keeping long-term interests in mind, especially in comparison to the United States of America that doesn't even make yearly plans. They make plans quarter by quarter, as opposed to 15-year plans they're trying to implement. No, I agree they have benefits, but often they build cities and infrastructure for the sake of having jobs for people. Wait, what? Yeah, okay. I don't know how to respond to that. Not only are you describing long-term plans and that benefit in the short term as well, but you're objectively wrong. I just described the concept of ghost cities. It's ridiculous. It's not real. Ghost cities are not real. They become real cities. Saying that in 2025 is kind of silly. They look like ghost cities because they're urban planning 5 to 10, if not 15 years ahead. Stop eating and talking at the same time. I'm not eating and talking at the same time. I'm not eating at all. What are you talking about?
The ability to borrow. I mean, let's be honest. If you put a tariff, you make everything coming in from abroad more.
In half an hour, I'm going to have Congressperson Greg Casar from Texas 35 on the broadcast. We're going to talk about the tariffs. We're going to talk about the future of the Democratic Party and how the Democrats must fight. Just letting you all know.
Expensive.
And then we'll continue this coverage
that means
today.
People will buy less of it. They'll shrink their standard of living. If American companies take advantage of the tariff, which they always do by raising their prices, that will also hurt the working class. You are immiserating your workers in order to try to solve the problem you haven't solved before. But here's the irony that may in the end come back to haunt us. Europe has been unable to unify under the umbrella of American alliances. The enmity of the United States is bringing Europe together better than the alliance was able to do. And as you pointed out, very important, China, Japan, and South Korea, with long histories of animosity and tension, are getting together to cope with this. Wow, we are.
All right, well, I'm moving on from this. How has China responded to Trump's tariffs? U.S. tariffs on Chinese imports to total at least 50%.
A glimpse inside China's fast fashion workshops is rare. Places that cut and stitch and steam for a living. Thousands of items a day, fast, cheap, and destined for America. This type of operation has undercut U.S. manufacturing.
Wait, hold on. Bradley, I'm live right now. I'm live right now. They can hear you.
Yeah, he told me to. I just did a pod with Steiny. He said call Hassan. We didn't know you were live.
Oh yeah, no, I'm always live. You already know.
8 hours on.
I'm gonna do Steiny's pod soon. Next week when I'm back, because I gotta leave this weekend.
I think we gotta have Brad there, Hassan.
Okay, I'm down to have Bradley there. He can moderate. He can be the moderating voice.
Yeah.
He already told me. He already told me he's a broke boy now. Trump cooked him. Trump cooked his net worth.
I'm broke.
No,
You're
I'm
broke. You gotta be broke too.
I'm broke too. I'm not gonna lie. I've lost.
Yeah, what happened? I thought Trump was bringing prosperity to America. What's going on, guys?
It's a long-term game. You know this.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, we can talk about that. We can talk about that.
Are you broke too now or what?
I don't know. I don't check that.
Hassan, all your money's in. You got all the crypto money.
No, I don't fuck around with crypto. But even the crypto markets are tanking.
Yeah, they're all fucked.
I make my money off of Twitch subs, which all of you can subscribe for $6 or for free with a Twitch Prime.
Yeah, he's good at it, man.
Yeah. I texted Bradley this morning. I was like, "What's going on with Trump, man? He's cooking." And Brad was like, "What do you mean he's cooking?" And I was like, "He's cooking the economy." He goes, "Yeah, I'm broke now." 10-10 right on the dot. Yeah, I dropped 10 gifted in this economy. Misfit Sharky, Hype Train, Level 2 G, Fluck, thank you for the 20 gifted subs. Decoy 166, thank you for the 5 gifted. That's right. You can also get a gifted a sub in this economy if you don't have. Bradley is Bradley Martin. He just did a podcast with Steiny, who wants me to go on his podcast as well. And I said I would do it. Look at the Republicans screaming bloody murder. Oh my God. Oh, tariffs are a tax on consumers. It is. What happened? Why didn't you say this before Trump said he was going to do the tariff regime, baby?
For years, and it's now vulnerable.
VIX just hit 30. The trading bots are going to pull billions in the next 2 hours.
Workshops are based on streets like this, places that just feel ill-equipped to withstand what's coming. At least 54% taxes on all goods sent to America. Trade at that price is almost impossible. A massive...
El Hassan for Steiny. Wait, what? LLU Hassan? What the fuck you mean? What he wanted me to go on his podcast. You think I'm going to say no to a person that says, "Hey, come talk to my audience about your worldview"? If you think I would ever say no to that, you don't understand this entire project. I will go anywhere and everywhere and talk to anyone, unless they're like a fucking straight up neo-Nazi or some shit. Steiny is one of the Nelk boys. Hassan, you're such a bitch. Okay.
Market wiped out overnight. Their only answer, for now, we must look elsewhere.
Other places might have better business opportunities, right? For instance, Africa is always good. Anyone can survive without relying on just one other country.
At the end of the day, workers pour from the factories. The people really at risk. Millions here could be put out of work in an economy already struggling. Adverts for short-term contracts are a reminder. Many don't even have a stable job to lose. China has already vowed to respond. Earlier restraint now feels unlikely.
Unilateral tariff hikes by the US violate WTO rules, harm the common interests of people of all countries.
By the way, this is also true. It does violate WTO rules, but as we read from Project 2025, my cousin is using the Bashar God Serious song for you. Check logs, update for you regarding your CNN piece. What do you mean? What are you doing? Are you working against me? She's asking if there's a song in particular you'd like to use in the intro of the segment. I suggested Syria Bashar God, like the old intro song you had. Are you fucking stupid? This guy is literally working against me, dude. No, don't use that fucking song. All right, god damn it. Let me finish this fucking piece. All right, anyway. They're trolling you, Law? Yeah. Okay, listen to me. Project 2025 is clear on this. The other side of this, aside from like decoupling America and it's trying to claw back America's manufacturing capabilities away from China, the other side of this argument is that America does not like the World Trade Organization and wants to rebuild it. They want to undermine WTO, especially with this favored nations clause, favored nations that China is also a part of, and rebuild something anew that does not give even a fraction of benefits to China. They want to rebuild global trade in their vision because China has been able to take advantage of global trade in this way.
Do not help solve the problems of the US itself. It is clear to everyone that more and more...
And yes, ironically enough, just like this chatter is correct, by the way, even though we disagree from time to time, he is absolutely on the money here. A lot of the things that Donald Trump is doing are ironically enough, continuations of longstanding American foreign policy and American trade policy, like Barack Obama, following Barack Obama's initiative. Now, this is shocking to hear, right? Because he very famously and very publicly fucking undermined Barack Obama's foreign policy, like the Iran denuclearization agreement. Having said that, however, Barack Obama is the initial president that demanded that Europe spend a higher percentage. Europe spent a higher percentage of their GDP on defense, on NATO. Donald Trump simply followed that Obama promise, which is precisely the reason why Joe Biden did not revoke that and continued with the Trump NATO has to spend more for their own defense perspective. Barack Obama also kneecapped WTO in 2016, and it is correct. You're not wrong about that. U.S. has not allowed judges, exactly. Ever since 2016, the U.S. has refused to allow judges to be appointed to the World Trade Organization. Joe Biden never went back on it. Trump never went back on it either, because this is a longer-term initiative that American foreign policy or American trade policy revolves around. They have been trying to combat China at the stage of global trade since the Barack Obama administration. This means that the appellate bodies cannot be staffed and no disputes can be settled. Exactly. They are starving the WTO. They've been starving the WTO and depriving it of its influence and power only so they can turn around and go, see, it's a feckless institution that only works at the behest of China. We have to build something anew. Ironically enough, I think that is also short-sighted for someone like Donald Trump because of the bully ball that Trump plays, which means that he's not going to have a lot of soft power capabilities to rebuild a new World Trade Organization. Having said that, however, this is literally the policy that is written bar for bar in Project 2025. It is straight up in the fucking 800 pages. We read the pages. I believe it was like directly at what, 783, page 783 from Project 2025, or somewhere around like 700 to 800. They openly state this. The WTO has never been able to form its own treaties, mostly because the U.S. It has never once made its own treaty and has not negotiated since the early 2000s. So this chatter is correct, even though we have our disagreements on China. That is the ultimate goal. The ultimate rich consume more, not regressive tax. Sales tax is good on non-essential goods. Rich consume more, not regressive tax. The fucking micro and macro economics understander has logged on to explain to people that a sales tax is not a regressive tax. Thank you. No, you're definitely right. The rich famously eat more food. You said on non-essential goods, but in general, you're just wrong. You're objectively wrong. It's a regressive tax, not because the rich consume more than the poor. It's a regressive tax because the poor make up. A flat tax across the board is always going to be paid for with a higher percentage of net income from the working poor than the wealthy. It's that simple. If you have $10 million and you're paying the same fucking taxes as a guy who has $100,000, who do you think is paying a larger share of their overall income year over year?
Countries are opposing the US's unilateral bullying actions, such as imposing tariffs.
And the broader region is reeling too. Over 40% rates for low-income nations like Cambodia and Vietnam will hit especially hard. Many Chinese firms have relocated here to avoid American tariffs. Workarounds now not an option.
Authorities here now face a complex balancing act. Further escalation will be costly and they can ill afford it, but they don't want to be seen to be weak. Behind the scenes, frenzied negotiations are no doubt underway, and some sort of grand deal is not impossible. But even if one is reached, China will have taken a lesson from today. The US is not to be trusted, and a further decoupling of the world's two biggest economies is almost certainly on the cards.
Experts here say such an outcome might even be desirable.
the trade pattern between the United States and China is not going to be sustainable economically and politically. We're preparing for this, that we can't rely on the U.S. market forever. The party is going to end. This probably is going to end a little bit earlier than a lot of people expect.
Exports account for a fifth of China's economy. An ability to produce and to sell has always been its superpower. It is a behemoth that can adapt. The question is, how quickly? Helen Ann Smith, Sky News, Beijing.
I agree with President Trump that others are taking unfair advantage of the current rules, and I'm ready to support any efforts to make the global trading system fit for the realities of the global economy.
When she says others, she means China, by the way. She's like, we hate China as well. Why are you doing this to us? We also hate China. Why are you doing this to us? They're being so unfair.
But
it's just funny because like we all kind of deserve it. You know what I mean? We all kind of deserve this because like we have done a lot of fucking devastation. We brought about a lot of devastation to the global south a little bit, you know. Shock doctrine coming back home, that imperial boomerang it sucks. It's awful. I think there are certainly better ways of going about this, but you know, it couldn't have happened to better people, okay? And these guys are literally slammed in the middle, and the only thing holding them at bay is, I think, the Orientalist framework that they operate off of, where they're like, we cannot trust the Chinese. Like, that's it. It's time, Ursula von der Leyen, to trust the Chinese, okay? I think that's what the situation demands. That's what the situation calls for. The notion that you're like, oh, well, they're doing a lot of unfair practices. Why are you doing this to us? Meanwhile, you're stuck between America and China, and America's fucking dicking you down. And you're still like, no, we must negotiate.
I also want to be clear. Reaching for tariffs as your first and last tool will not fix it. This is why from the outset, we have always been ready to negotiate with the United States to remove the remaining barriers to transatlantic trade. At the same time, we are prepared to respond. We are already finalizing the first package of countermeasures in response to tariffs on steel, and we're now preparing for further countermeasures to protect our interests and our businesses if negotiations fail. President Trump's announcement of universal tariffs on the whole world, including the European Union, is a major blow to the world economy. I deeply regret this choice. Let's be clear-eyed about the immense consequences. The global economy will massively suffer. Uncertainty will spiral and trigger the rise of further protectionism. The consequences will be dire for millions of people around the globe, also for the most vulnerable countries, which are now subject to some of the highest U.S. tariffs. The opposite of what we wanted to achieve. The tariffs will
If the response to the tariffs put in place by the U.S. administration is to make immediate concessions or to announce investments to get exemptions, it's a very bad idea. Because we have a strength. It's a market of 450 million residents. That's Europe. The EU is 450 million consumers. It's more than the U.S. market. What message would it send if major European players started investing in the American economy at a time that they're hitting us? So we need collective solidarity.
As I told President Trump during our call last week.
Funny thing about the EU trying to glad hand the U.S. is not a negotiation tactic. Scoop, the White House's internal talking points tell surrogates that Trump's new global tariff regime should not be characterized as a starting point for negotiations, sources say. Trump also telling advisors they are not about setting up talks. Full story is the investors in the world try to figure out the fate of Trump's country-specific tariffs, which have sent the market reeling. Just to be specific here and emphasize what we are and are not saying, the White House talking points say surrogates should not be characterizing them as starting points for the negotiations. So them being like, them turning around and not immediately trying to defend themselves against this by setting up different trade relationships with China is hilarious. because America doesn't want to play ball. Now, what's interesting about this process is how silly it is how silly this has been conducted, how silly this has been implemented, and how silly it is overall. What do I mean by this? First of all, Whirlpool to eliminate 651 manufacturing jobs in Amana, Iowa, according to the Des Moines Register. So it's already happening. But also, the way that they calculated these fucking tariffs, supposedly, is even dumber than I previously thought. Yesterday, my speculation was that they're talking about unfair trade practices, trade barriers, and also currency manipulation is the suggestion that the Trump administration had made on its face as to why they decided that China was, doing 67% tariffs on America. It turns out that wasn't even the calculation. That was simply the marketing for the calculation. The calculation actually was just over trade deficits and potentially done through ChatGPT or another fucking AI bot, which is the dumbest possible way to enact global trade policy. The tweet that we looked at yesterday of that one guy who was like, "Oh, I suspect that the tariff math is actually coming from trade deficits and not actually real calculations on like any sort of hardline trade, like VAT or any sort of domestic tax policy that they're deciding is a tariff, which is not. Regardless, it's none of that. It quite literally is just trade deficit numbers. That's it. Cambodia has 97% tariff. No, Cambodia exports 12 billion. USA exports to Cambodia 350 million. 350 million divided by 12 billion is 3%. 100 minus 3, 97%. Do this for every tariff. No, what's even worse is literally the method that ChatGPT suggests. If you ask how to fix a trade deficit with tariffs, they ask ChatGPT how to fix the economy and then just fucking did whatever it said. I don't even know what to say. How can someone be so stupid? Edit to add on ChatGPT, the following prompt will immediately get you the method they used. If I wanted to even the playing field with respect to trade deficit with foreign nations using tariffs, how would I pick the tariff rates? Give me specific calculation. And by the way, they admitted it. It's not like this is something that they're sheltering. They fucking admitted it. New York Times confirms. The answer appears to begin with the total trade deficit America runs with its trading partners. That's it. Trade deficit with China, $291.9 billion. Imports from China, $433.8 billion, is equal to 0.6728 or 67%, or what the U.S. says China is charging us. That figure then divided by 2 is 34%, which is the new reciprocal tariff on China. It is baby brain. It is fucking baby brain, dude. Remember yesterday I was talking about like how can people be duped by a machine that they know has the capacity to simply lie to them and give you incorrect information? These guys are not only getting duped by it, they're celebrating it, they're using it, and they admitted it. Yep, they did. They fucking put out an executive summary basically confirming this. I usually only watch Hassan's YouTube channel, but this tariff shit is so incomprehensible to me. I had to come here. My Northern European doesn't get what the fuck is this. We didn't do trade deficit / imports. We did trade deficit. I keep trying to work, but then return to how funny this is. He goes, we didn't do trade deficit / imports. We did trade deficit 4 times 0.25 imports. Which, by the way, like this is the other funny part about this. The White House deputy press secretary came out and said this person's assumption was incorrect, only to prove that it is literally correct. Yeah, we multiplied it by 1. That's what it is. Do you understand how fucking stupid we are? How is this the wealthiest nation on the planet? How the fuck? I always look to how stupid the average American is, and I think to myself, how the fuck did we become the domineering force on the planet? But this right here is a new low in the stupidity. I cannot understand. I literally cannot comprehend how the rest of the planet looks at our fat, unwashed, stupid, Ameribrained morons dominating global trade and goes, yeah, there's nothing we can do because the alternative is Chinese. And I'm scared of the Chinese. That's literally all that is happening here. Your European leaders If you're in Europe and you're watching me right now, understand that they are literally going, well, on the one hand, we have these sweaty Amerifat morons, okay? And on the other hand, we have Chinese people. And I'm scared of Chinese people, so I'm going to keep going with the fucking sweaty Amerifat morons that are dominating global trade. That's it. That's literally it. That is the guiding, motivating principle for why we are continuing along this trajectory. Let's see how far it goes. Incredible, dude. Incredible. Incredibly stupid. Are the tariffs being used to cause a global recession with their hopes that it cements fascist regimes? No, that would mean long-term thinking. This is still, ironically, short-term thinking from the administration. It follows suit on long-standing American trade policy and American foreign policy in general. That stuff is uniparty overall. But the ways in which Trump is pushing this to the next stage is incredibly dumb and incredibly Trumpian. And you know, it's destined for failure. It's destined for a major crash. Yeah, it's over. Finance bros. Donald Trump, we shouldn't have supply chains. We shouldn't have them all. We should have them all in the United States. We have the companies to do it. He's Jusha. He's Jusha. I'm telling you, man, Trump is Jusha. He loves the Kim dynasty. It's self-reliance time. Oh, it's incredible. I am in awe. Overheard in the newsroom. I just got something from a vanilla company. I guess 70% of the world's supply comes from Madagascar. We are going to have months and months worth of stories out of this. Hard to even know where to begin. Madagascar is now facing 47% tariffs. No more vanilla ice cream. People that support this have no idea of anything, yet they're so confident. They think it's a tax and not a cost of doing business. Is ridiculous. Wait, it is a tax. Where? So you're telling me people fucking understand that this is a tax and they like it? Like, I don't understand. I thought Americans hated tax. God, Americans are so stupid. Oh my God, I wish there was like a charismatic force, like a Trumpian charismatic force that was genuinely guided by Marxist-Leninist principles. I swear to God, Americans are the most malleable fucking dullards on the planet. Holy fuck. I have to believe that if only there was a fucking telegenic great man. I'm not a great man believer, okay? But I can't look at the situation and not assume that if there was like a telegenic, charismatic great man who truly wanted to implement Marxist principles, that Americans just wouldn't follow suit as long as you sold it. As long as you sold it to them in a way that they understand. They're over here fucking advocating for mass sales taxes they're going to have to pay for. It is mind-boggling. Someone said Cory Booker. Yeah. Yeah, totally. Anyway, in the next 3 minutes, I'm going to be talking to... actually, I'm just going to call them up right now. Let's see if they're already here. Greg Casar. Lead us to a second Shays rebellion over tariffs. This propaganda is feeding into their fear of communism in China. But it doesn't make sense. This one getting lots of payoff. I know. This permanently lives in my mind. Chinese international student in my class was telling me about how his evangelical dad in Beijing believes that Trump was chosen by God to win the election, but that his victory is part of a larger divine plan to destroy the United States. Fantastic. Fantastic stuff. Meanwhile, they've lost Ted Cruz, who is nothing, okay, and is ultimately meaningless. Ted Cruz is a meaningless figure. He is a coward and a charlatan. Instead, I'm going to be talking to another Texas politician who I actually do like. His name is Greg Casar. Here it is. Hold on. Start virtual camera. Turn on the camera. Ladies and gentlemen, hopefully we have Greg Casar in the building. Let's see if we actually do. He hasn't. Okay. Oh, nope. Hello?
Other way.
You want to put your camera sideways? You want to put your phone sideways? Oh, almost.
I got it. Can you see me okay?
No, it's still vertical. You want to turn it sideways?
Put this thing away like this way?
Yeah, there it is. Perfect. All right, we got Congressperson Greg Casar in the building. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for coming on. This is very interesting times to have you on. I have a lot of questions for you.
It feels like every day it's a bad day, but yeah, looking forward to talking.
Yeah, last time you were here, I was hoping that you would become the next leader of the Progressive Caucus, and since then it has happened. And it's very exciting times, I guess, because there is some momentum building up right now within the Democratic Party. There's a couple different planks, I would say, in the Democratic Party. It seems like you got the abundance mindset people on the one hand, but then you have the populist left on the other, with Bernie Sanders, AOC, yourself included, in this, in the big tent. Not to say that these guys are fighting against one another, but instead it seems like there is a little bit of a party restructuring that's taking place. And I do hope, and this is my assessment, you don't have to agree with this or not, I do hope that the populist left will win out in this process because I feel like it's the last hope for America to not completely collapse on its own contradictions.
Well, I'm really happy to talk about that. So let's do it.
All right. What do you think about that then?
What do I think about that baseline proposition? Well, I think you are right about a few, I think to me, very clearly right about a few parts of this. One, the Democratic Party loss in November was devastating for the world, and Trump being elected obviously has led to daily horrible abuses. But right when that happened, there was immediately a big debate about whether this was a big deal of a loss or not. And I went back to Washington, D.C. from Texas, and there were folks who were saying, hey, this wasn't so bad. The Dems didn't lose by very much. And there were those of us who said, no, this is devastating. Losing working class voters in this way over the course of the last decade plus destroys the entire purpose of the party, undermines the entire philosophy of the party. We might as well pack up and just go home and go the way of the Whig Party if we can't solve that. And first, there was that debate, whether this was a big deal. And that argument in some ways has been won by those folks of all wings of the party who thought this was really bad, because now there's actually people who agree, no matter where they stand on centrist versus left or populist versus technocratic, they say, yeah, we've been losing working class voters and we got to fix that. So people have acknowledged the collapse. The only hope in that is it seems like everybody's willing to go and work on the problem. And then what you've pointed out is now different people are coming up with their different ways of saying, well, what should the politics of the party be? And I think just the other day, after this Wisconsin Supreme Court election that Democrats so overwhelmingly won by rightfully targeting Musk's pillaging not just of our economy, but of our government, I think the anti-oligarchy political argument has really started winning the day there too, because it wasn't very long ago. And I'd be interested, folks watching at home, you should Google it. There were a lot of articles written in November, December, January about certain Democrats worrying whether punching Musk was good politics or not. They were saying, oh, this might backfire on us. We should be talking about how somebody making gajillions of dollars is a good thing. That's aspirational. No, most people don't think a billionaire should be buying the government and running the economy. And I think we're starting to win that argument too. But happy to keep talking about that. But my assessment is that was a real debate. It's not done, but actually the forces of people who say we can build a big tent by being a populist working people's party, I haven't seen this much success in a while. Of course, it's under really dire circumstances.
Yeah. I think a part of that initiative, also a part of that movement, also needs to come with like real, tangible changes being made in ways that the American population can see and comprehend. And I think that starts off with not instantly running to Silicon Valley tech CEOs and the remainder that still support the Democratic Party and saying, no, we're going to give you unfettered access as well once we come back to power. Please don't remove your donations. Please don't remove us from the donation list. But instead to say, no, this country is not run by oligarchs. This country is not run by the incredibly wealthy, and maybe repackaging it, not even with the terms oligarchs, but by simple corruption. Because Trump did something that I consider to be expert level messaging, where he just said he's going to drain the swamp. That was a lie. He is a swamp monster himself, but it was at its face something that we see in Latin American countries quite a bit, as a matter of fact, anti-corruption messaging. And I think that the Democrats could also engage in anti-corruption messaging, but it's not just about saying that you're anti-corruption. You have to also show that you're anti-corruption, because the Republican Party's retort always is, well, you have billionaires on your side too, and it's all the woke ones, and they're gay and bad or whatever, right? So I think that there is definitely some more movement that needs to happen in the Democratic Party on that front. But I do feel
a big opening to do it now. I mean, part of what I hope we can do is right now, when there's all this energy against corruption, let's go and ask folks to get on the bills to ban congressional stock trading, to permanently get big money out of politics, to end gerrymandering. And I think there's more energy towards that than any other time that I've been paying attention here to congressional politics. The energy has been there, of course, for years, but I feel like there's an opening for us to do it right now. I was at this rally in Tucson with Bernie and AOC. We were told there were going to be about 2,000 people in a high school gym. 23,000 people showed up. They took over the entire football field. It was the biggest rally in Arizona history. And there were a lot of folks there who said, look, I wasn't with Bernie 10 years ago, but damn, he's been right this entire time. Before, when he was talking about billionaires running the show behind the curtain, I wasn't so sure. But now they're out here in public bragging about it and running cabinet meetings. And so there's a real opening, I think, where the voters are going to go towards the people who say that breaking the unholy alliance between corporate greed and corrupt government should be like the central project of whatever the good party is. And I hope that the Democratic Party transforms and goes and fills that void.
Yeah. In the interim, however, in the short term, I think, in order to offer America a stay of execution, the Democrats have a lot more that they must do in order to claw back confidence from the American public. And I think a part of that is also engaging in obstructionist policies. I will admit that one of the most united messages that I hear from the Democratic caucus overall is specifically on issues that are not exactly top of mind for many Americans, issues that they don't really care about, whether it be restoring U.S. aid funding. Now, we can argue about whether or not U.S. aid is a necessary force, but that's not what I'm talking about. To me, I think Americans see U.S. aid in the same way that they see NATO, something that Biden is talking about. It's foreign policy. It's not related directly to their pockets, even if it does have a lot of good, right? I think on the messaging front, it seems like the caucus, the Democratic Party, uniting on those issues rather than issues that directly pertain to their civil liberties being taken away, I feel like is a moment that they're missing out on doing messaging on, not focusing on austerity and how damaging austerity is, and mass layoffs at the federal level as much, I think, is also another one. And you can do that around the anti-Elon sentiment as well, because he is seen as the figurehead for this initiative.
Well, and here's an interesting point where I think, I'm even though I'm weird and I'm in Congress and we're all just sort of humans and we pick up messages in a certain kind of way. And I think that what you just described, even though you watch Congress and politics really close, is really interesting, because technically the united message that we hear all the time, that I hear every day in the halls of Congress, is defend Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. But even what you hear most loudly is something like USAID. Why? You ask yourself why. And the answer to me, tell me if you disagree, but I think it's because there's such a strong, clear contrast between the Republican position and the Democratic position that it stands out in your mind. Doesn't matter if they said Social Security 10 times, if the Democrats said Social Security 10 times and USAID once, you hear the USAID one louder because there's such a clear difference between the two parties. And I think this is where sometimes the Democratic Party, not just sometimes, I think a lot of times why the Democratic Party message falls flat, because we think, let's just say defend Social Security. It polls like bananas, polls at 90%, but nobody hears it. Why? Because it's boring. Republicans also say defend Social Security. If we talked about expanding it, making it so that no senior had to live in poverty ever again, increasing the payments way past cost of living by making it so that people that make over $400,000 a year have to actually pay into Social Security past $400,000, and there was some controversy around it, then it'd be a message. But right now, what I'll tell you is if you say what you just said to the leaders in the party, of which I'm sort of becoming one, I guess, in its own way as the Progressive Caucus chair, they'd say, Hassan, no, our message is on Social Security. And you'd be like, well, I don't know. And we'd show you 10,000 press releases that fell in the forest, but nobody heard them. And part of it is we need a stronger contrast with Republicans, be willing enough to engage in controversy so that people notice what the hell comes out of our mouth. And and people notice on USAID because Trump got rid of it. And we're saying, hey, this might starve like lots of kids that don't need starving. And there's controversy. So people know the difference between the two parties. We say defend Social Security. They say defend Social Security. Of course, we know they're trying to gut it, but the message is so similar that it gets washed out in the whole mess.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's exactly what I want out of Democratic leadership in general, which is to move the reactionary forces within the Republican Party in the direction where they dominate the conversation and not play catch up against whatever the domineering Republican narrative is. And I think while clearly Cory Booker doing the record-breaking filibuster, even though it was not directional against like any sort of bill that was passing, is a good start on this process. I think even in that process, even within that initiative, in an effort to dominate the conversation, because that's what his comms team said, if your message still falls flat to a certain degree because it doesn't have like a bold progressive agenda associated with it, attached to it, of like what the Democrats stand for, the Republican Party will, move on from that, and it'll be all but an afterthought. Now, going back to what you just said, though, as far as like drawing a line of demarcation between your ideological enemies and the ideological enemies of the American working class, I think there are plenty of standout issues where the Democratic Party could actually separate itself directly through messaging discipline. One of those instances is on immigration. This is an issue that you and I align on almost entirely, and yet I have seen very little conversations coming from the top Democratic leadership in Congress. And I think that there needs to be significantly more organizing on this, and the Democrats should stop being fearful of all the polls that they see that show 60% of Americans love, random Venezuelan barbers being shipped off to El Salvador. Like, they should stop focusing on that and instead have a message that is dictated by empathy and morality, and start leading rather than following the Republican example.
Well, here's a place where I think we have a lot to learn from just 7 years ago. Remember, immigration during the last Trump administration was an offense issue for the Democrats, not a defense one.
Yeah.
Because, of course, if you tell American voters in an anxious moment where we aren't picking Wall Street CEOs as the villains, hey, things are screwed up, and if somebody's breaking the law, you have a problem with them, especially as folks report that they're feeling less safe in their own communities, then yeah, you're going to wind up with some of the poll numbers you see. But if you go and tell folks they're taking law enforcement resources that are supposed to keep you safe, and like you said, sending a barber to a foreign torture camp, I mean, that's not something that folks support. And I think that if we can lead with empathy, but where I would learn from the last time around with the first Trump administration is also tell people how this doesn't actually make you more safe, then I think we can make this an offense issue too. But we shouldn't lose that second part, because due process isn't just an idealistic thing. It's to protect your safety and your family's safety. As soon as somebody can get bagged by a completely, like a cop in a hoodie who is legally, like a student who is legally present here can get bagged by a cop in a hoodie for their political opinions. I mean, that's just like not a country that people want to live in. It's not the country that they imagine the United States to be. And we've got to figure out how to get back on offense on immigration, because, immigration is going to keep happening in this country, and we can't let the right wing forever have that as an issue.
And it's not just offense on immigration as well, because this ties back to a severe, perhaps the most significant violation of First Amendment protections on U.S. soil up until this very moment. Only in like historic moments of like war or during the McCarthyist trial period, during the most heated moments of the Red Scare, did we have this level of erosion over the First Amendment. And it's happening at the behest of a foreign nation, which I think is something that the Democrats could stress, but I don't think that they will. And it kind of goes back to the same fissure or the same lack of interest in both leading by example and the lack of interest in listening to really loud majorities within the base when it comes to Israel. I think this is, people get very scared when the subject matter comes up. Like Democratic representatives, Democratic politicians get very scared to make bold declarative statements about this issue, with some notable exceptions. But I think it's one that genuinely would win a lot of favor from the base of the Democratic Party and independents as well. This is the one area where they never look at polls. They look at polls when it comes to immigration, but for some reason, Democrats never look at the polls on this key issue where the overwhelming majority of the population wants a ceasefire. And now they could be polarizing the base and galvanizing the base against Donald Trump, who has continued and accelerated the violence that Palestinians are subjected to with our tax-paying dollars, and is using Israel, and even worse than that, using Judaism falsely with this conflation to black bag people for the crime of exercising their free speech. It's completely un-American. It's completely unacceptable.
I mean, continue to be disappointed with the small number of votes that we can get to stop sending bombs to Netanyahu, who just said the other day openly that he is keeping the Trump plan on the table of ethnic cleansing of Gaza. So it's just unacceptable. Should be unacceptable to anybody. What Netanyahu continues to say he's pursuing over there. And then on the free speech issue, I think that people that disagree with you or me on what is happening to folks in Palestine should still be speaking out on free speech. In fact, I think that it's really important for progressives when we see the free speech right trampled of somebody with right-wing views to say, no, somebody should also be able to express their right-wing views or their left-wing views or their popular views or their unpopular views. And like you said, this is something that connects with our base of voters. But honestly, there's a lot of people that are independent and conservative where protection of free speech rights is deeply important to them too. And again, when I think about how we learn from the wave of organizing energy 7 and 8 years ago, I'll be honest, I was always pretty uncomfortable with how there were moments in that period of time where there were progressives that wanted to shut down like even right-wing speakers at a school. Look, you can embarrass them, you can point out that they're hypocrites, but I think actually we should promote more and more speech because it never works out for dissidents and creative people and progressives and workers for the state to be able to stop speech. It just never works out the right way. And free speech, I think, is just sort of should be a core value for any populist movement, in my view. Just for viewers at home, I think if you want to look up the right way of dealing with this, a few decades ago in Austin, where I'm sitting right now, the KKK was setting up to do a march. There was going to be a few dozen maniacs. And activists went and asked the mayor to pull the permit and not let them march. And the mayor, I think, did the right thing. He let them have the permit. The 3 dozen freaking wackos were marching up Congress Avenue in downtown. And then 200 Austinites showed up, lined the street. And as the KKK marched through, they turned around, pulled their pants down and mooned them and humiliated them as they walked up the road. And I feel like it's that kind of a spirit that's more of the American spirit that I think would actually really behoove us as a Democratic Party to embrace.
Yeah, look, the debate over protecting the First Amendment, I think, is better served when had over the boundaries of like the actual erosions that are taking place. Your state, the state of Texas, has some rigorous applications of boycott, divestment, and sanctions laws that are in direct violation of the First Amendment.
They fired, I think she was like a speech therapist here in Eastern Travis County because she refused to sign a statement saying that she was opposed to, that she was going to refuse to participate in BDS. So you don't have to have a view on BDS to have a view that it's just deeply wrong.
Yeah.
For somebody to lose their job over that. And so I think that's where this gets most serious.
Yeah, and the two senators that were consistently critical of the anti-BDS legislation were Dianne Feinstein and Bernie Sanders. I think that this needs to be a conversation, at least in my experience, when I have this conversation with like right-wing people, with reactionary people that I talk to, both in my day-to-day or even with commentators and whatnot, they're shocked. They're shocked that this is a thing that already exists in the United States of America far before October 7, and it is only accelerated under the Trump administration, which unfortunately the Biden administration also contributed to by consistently delegitimizing the very valid student protests and encampments that were taking place on college campuses with the 3,100 arrests that took place specifically on college campuses for students protesting against the state of Israel, calling it an apartheid or calling what Israel is doing a genocide. Even beyond the First Amendment grounds, I think that there's a reason why it only accelerates. There's a reason why issues like this only turn worse and worse under the Trump administration, because the Democrats don't consistently stand on principles on this. And I think that is like a real area of concern, because I talked to Ested Herndon from the New York Times the other day, and one of the things that he mentioned to me that is kind of disappointing overall is that Americans don't necessarily care about some of the most damaging aspects of the Trump agenda. And I think that is due to a lack of communication from the Democratic Party that is like recentering the attention on these issues, whether it be the First Amendment erosions that are happening with the Trump administration black bagging students with student visas, and even Mahmoud Khalil with a green card. The process of denaturalization, or the process of like revoking his green card is on erroneous claims is completely ridiculous. And also just the deportations as a whole and the erosion of due process as a whole is not something that the American population is aware of. And I think beyond the tariffs, beyond everything that we've just talked about, the erosion of due process that has a long-standing tradition since like the 12th, the 13th century and is at the underlying heart of liberalism in general. I think it's ridiculous that we're taking that away, and it seems like the public is not aware of it. Like that's terrifying to me.
I know it's really terrifying, and I think that we should be more clearly calling it out and going on the offense on that issue when we're talking about immigration or when we're talking about public safety. But I also think that it's really important, and we have this really critical moment where we recognize that if we aren't addressing the core economic needs and economic anxieties of the people, then we're just like all these other places that folks read about and think about only happens in a faraway place. You start losing those civil liberties if at the end of the day, we lost that November election because folks felt like prices going up and their wages being stagnant was a real freaking issue, and we sounded as Democrats like the party of the status quo. And that's at the end of the day. And if you don't make sure that you're listening to how people are feeling and feel like you can actually address the issues of corruption in the economy, baseline for people, then next thing you know, you open up that window where all these things you've had for hundreds of years can start to go away. And I, as somebody who deeply cares about the rights of the vulnerable, about righteous causes that may not be fully popular yet, we don't get to do any of that until we first make sure that we have a broad popular base of voters who believe that we care about their
Absolutely.
pocketbooks. And I think that's the big lesson for us.
I'm
Horrible
definitely, I'm
tragic
100%
lesson.
in agreement there for sure. I do agree. I think that you are better equipped to protect marginalized identities, marginalized communities like trans people, if you already have a bold, progressive, populist agenda that people sign on to, and you can earnestly communicate that and have people believe in your party again. Only after that can you go, all right, Medicare for all means for all. Like, we're not cutting trans people out of this bargain. If you want healthcare, then everyone else is going to get healthcare. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, people would be like, oh yeah, they gave some healthcare to some people where I might have some disagreement, but God, my entire life got way better. So like that's a side complaint. That's like they pulled my grandparents out of poverty and my neighbor's kids entirely out of poverty. And yeah, the asylum program seems maybe a little bit more liberal than I would want it. But like at the end of the day, these are the good guys. I mean, that's where we want to be.
Absolutely. I want to ask you one final question that might be a little tricky, and
okay.
So that's
why I come on here, man. Yeah. I always know you're always
two questions.
Okay.
First and foremost, this is not the tricky one. First and foremost, the Bernie AOC and you've participated in this as well. The Stop Oligarchy tour is great. I've attended it. I plan on attending the Los Angeles rally on April 12th as well. And I think that it's good because it's motivating the Democratic Party to pay attention to this kind of messaging, and it's proving your work, basically, that this kind of populist messaging is something that people want. They want a fighter. They want solutions. I do, however, worry that it kind of falls short of what is necessary for the time right now. And one of the things that I'm advocating for, at least, is that there should be a narrower focus on key issues that we want to either A, help fight against, or B, move messaging in the direction of. And I think that would require organizing beyond just organizing a rally, but then using the organizational capabilities of this movement to direct it at individual problems. Mass demonstrations taking place against the unjustifiable arrest of Mahmoud Khalil, for example. I think that would be a really good way to solidify and single out an issue where there is a serious erosion of the First Amendment, and be able to maybe even deliver some kind of tangible results there to really prove that this kind of popular momentum can get stuff done. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think freeing Mahmoud Khalil is a great organizing principle, and I hope to hear those words repeated over and over again until not only he is freed, but everybody else in his situation is freed. The two messages that I have tried to really focus people on, both at those rallies and through my own messaging, are to save Medicaid as we know it, because it is on the chopping block. Like, they want to end it as we know it in the coming months. And that is a winnable fight, an entirely winnable fight. You just need national pressure and have 3 Republicans out of over 200 of them flip, and we could win that. Just like the Affordable Care Act, which obviously you and I both know how little it is compared to what we want. But since that was saved about 7 years ago, that was a galvanizing moment. Now Medicaid is on chopping block. And then second, firing Elon Musk, which I was told by Republican members of Congress was never going to happen, that he was going to make it through just as long, if not longer, than Trump. Trump's already starting to feel the pressure of how this is politically dragging him down. I think it'd be a huge win if we get Elon Musk fired. Those are the sorts of organizing principles where I think we got to make a clear demand. In my view, fire Elon Musk is a great central organizing principle. Saving Medicaid as we know it, great central organizing principle. Of course, freeing Mr. Khalil is a moral imperative. People can have their whole long grocery list, but I think honestly it's not that long. And we can have organizing campaigns around each of them. But to me, it all kind of brings us back to what is the Democratic Party's central organizing principle. And I don't think it can be a laundry list of issues anymore. And back in the 20s and 30s and 40s and 50s, it was breaking that alliance between corporate greed and corrupt government, and saying that at its heart is the problem that we're trying to fix for people. And I think we've got a chance of bringing at least some of that back here in the coming months around any of those campaigns.
Yeah. Okay. So the last question I have for you before we let you go, and thank you so much for coming on, is that there's a New York mayoral race where you endorsed Brad Lander. You've met him before, according to the political reports, at least when you were a council member, and so was he in New York. And I was wondering what the decision making was there, especially considering that there is currently a lot of popular momentum building behind someone who I have supported, someone who I plan on interviewing as well, Zoran Mamdani. And Brad, from what I understand, is also a progressive person as well. It's not, he's not exactly like a conservative either, but I was wondering if there's what was like you, especially as the leader of the Progressive Caucus.
No, I'm happy to talk about it.
Yeah.
And I got a chance to talk with Senator Mamdani the other day, and I wished him a ton of luck and hope people rank him really highly as well. And obviously would be thrilled if he was able to win the mayor's race. I endorsed Brad Lander, who's the controller of the city of New York. So he's a citywide elected official already. And I've worked with Brad for years and years and years, like 10 years. I was elected to the city council here in Austin. First ran when I was 24, started out when I was 25, met Brad when he was a New York City Council member. And what's really special about Brad is he is like a generous person in politics. Most people are trying to figure out how relationships and things flow to themselves. He was out there helping make sure that things were better in cities all around the country without taking credit for it. And potentially maybe sometimes to his political detriment. But, we were working, for example, on making sure that we could pass paid sick days policies in Texas, Dallas, Austin, San Antonio, just like the one that he helped get done in New York City. When there were tenants getting evicted in the city of New York, and the big money that was actually behind the equity fund, the private equity fund that was kicking them out, was based in Texas. We were coordinating across states. So he's a great guy, very, very progressive, and I think has a real shot at building a winning coalition because he's already a citywide elected official. But the good news is with ranked choice voting, he doesn't have to be a spoiler to Zoran, and Zoran doesn't have to be a spoiler to Brad. People that support them can rank them as number 1 and number 2, or number 2 and number 1.
As a real shot as well, according to all the polls that I've seen so far, especially because I think everyone, at least every progressive person, every leftist person, even liberals should probably try and make sure that Andrew Cuomo is not the next mayor of New York City.
Yeah, amen to that. And I think it's a great reason for us to, again, in this New York City mayoral race, you've got things like public financing of campaigns, you've got ranked choice voting, and so that creates the opportunity for there to be coalition building, where like you and me don't have to be talking about how your candidate is screwing up the other candidate's shot. I think that they can, and that's part of why I think reforming our electoral system is so key, not just in New York but across the country.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from you again, Greg Casar. Everybody, is there any final words that you want to impart on people here?
Yeah, well, thanks for having me on. And I just think for everybody watching, you got to know, like, we're in a moment. I went and had a town hall in Chip Roy's district, who helps lead the Right Wing Freedom Caucus, in a town of 8,500 people, 400 folks, showed up. So the organizing you're doing can make a real difference. I know, like, the last few months, people are like, what should I do? Does this make a difference? These phone calls, these town halls, these marches, this organizing you can do at your workplace, it makes a real difference. We're in a moment right now where we can transform and reshape the Democratic Party, where we can change the boundaries of all this, but we got to think about speaking to a broad set of people.
Oh, okay.
I think we got
I do have a question. I have another question. I can't believe I didn't ask you about this.
You give me a little space to drag on, and here we go.
No, Trump's tariffs. So the UAW has come out.
We're in tariff world now.
Yeah, UAW has come out in support of it. I love Sean Fain. I understand where they're coming from in terms of like trade protectionist policies. It does feel like this is another moment for the Democrats where I hope that they message in this moment in the appropriate way, where they don't come out as like unrestricted free trade supporters, which is precisely the reason why Donald Trump was able to carry over that resentment against the Clinton brand in 2016, where a lot of the working class that lost their jobs due to NAFTA truly despise this brand of Democratic Party politics. And while Trump is, of course, going in this direction in the most haphazard way possible, there needs to be industrial base built here before any sort of trade protectionism could take place. And obviously, these tariffs are going to increase the cost of living, the cost of all goods, and it's going to have truly harmful effects. I do hope that the Democratic Party position overall is not, we have to protect free trade, because I feel like that in and of itself is going to that in and of itself is not going to be a popular message. What do you think about that? Before
that's what Trump wants Democrats to do. He wants Democrats to just be the anti-Trump party, so then just go back into as much Clintonism as possible, which sounds like we don't care about having American jobs here. We can't do that.
Yeah.
What we should say is, tariffs are a powerful tool. They're like a scalpel, and what Trump is going and doing is the equivalent of using a chainsaw for brain surgery. I mean, like, as you pointed out, it's reckless. He's going to raise prices, and he doesn't care about bringing American jobs home or about, the American worker.
Or good benefits in good paying American jobs, especially, which is something that the UAW stressed when considering, of course, the fact that he is removing the collective bargaining power from 1 million plus federal employees right now.
Yeah, he basically just wiped out collective bargaining for 1.5 million people, and that should be a central rallying cry for our party. And frankly, I think he needs to be talking a lot more about that. He just got rid of the minimum wage of $17 an hour for federal contractors. So, essentially, look, we're gonna see with these tariffs is you're just wait to see the lobbyists coming and cashing in to get their exemptions. Yeah. To have the foreign leaders of foreign nations going to Jared Kushner and Eric Trump and making an investment deal, and suddenly they're off the hook. I mean, at the end of the day, this is all about Trump and the corrupt folks making more money, not about bringing American jobs home. And that's where we got to go. And here's I think the last bit of news of the week here, alongside the tariffs. For my parting words are, Democrats used to cozy up to folks like Mark Zuckerberg because they thought he was on their side, but he was always a problem. He was always a monopolist, always screwing workers and consumers. He shouldn't be controlling the information that we all get. And as soon as Trump's in office, right, he goes and cuts a $25 million Zuckerberg settlement with Trump, $25 million in cash to Trump. And now he's got multiple meetings at the Oval Office. He's trying to get rid of his anti-monopoly lawsuit. So this is the moment where Democrats need to say, we're breaking with those guys. Those are the guys that are going to be cutting Trump the check. The tariffs can work, but this is actually all part right now of the Trump cashing in grift.
It's a sales tax. With a nefarious purpose. It's a sales tax, and they want to cut the last remaining progressive taxation structure we have in this country, and they want to make the working poor foot the bill by implementing this.
Costs are going to go up from these things. Trump promised voters, whether they're voting for him or not, that he's going to bring down costs. And all Trump's been trying to figure out is how to bring down another check for himself for a billionaire tax break. And we'll see if I'll be pushing, my party to adopt that sort of message. But honestly, the people speaking out and responding to that message makes a big difference, because if we can get folks to run for the House on that kind of message and win some of these tough seats, then you'll have folks running for president on that kind of message. And what Trump did is he transformed the entire Republican Party from a Mitt Romney style party to the Trump style party by virtue of winning the voters in a presidential campaign. And my hope is that there are real Democratic presidential candidates that take this kind of message we've been talking about and have the kind of transformation the Democratic Party needs for the Democratic Party's existence, and frankly, just for the good of the entire world. So I'll leave it at that with you, but it's always good to hang out with you here and the folks that watch.
Hell yeah. Thank you so much.
Thanks, man. Right. Take care.
Have a good one. That was Greg Casar, ladies and gentlemen, Text 35. I hope you guys enjoyed that, and I hope it was informative, instructive, enlightening. Yes, you now have freedom, chat. You can now have the freedom to chirp again. You have to put it in emote mode. All right, we're going to get back to tariffs as I eat because I'm starving. Only thing you got to work on in interviews, you go on long tangents. No, that was deliberate, okay? It's not just the interview. You need to understand. There are moments when I do that. There are moments when I don't do that. I'm not trying to do... This wasn't one of those instances. There's a reason why I did what I did, okay? There's a reason why I did what I did. That is not an interview. There's a conversation. It's different. I need to also maybe rebrand it as something. Like maybe I'll do a interview segment and sometimes I'll do a conversation segment. You know what I mean? Okay. EKH3 when? What the fuck is that? There is no way that in perhaps one of the most important news days of the year, you are not embarrassed to ask me right on the heels of me fucking interviewing a goddamn congressperson about drama shit. What the fuck is wrong with you, chatter? Are you for real? My bad, didn't think you'd see it. Why'd you at me then? It's like, yeah, tariffs are destroying the global markets and all, but can you talk to me about Ethan Klein? That's crazy. You should be a little bit, at least a little bit embarrassed to say that, like right here. Stop talking about Ethan. Are you telling me that, or are you telling the chatter that? Trump talking about President Xi like a bitter old ex? Let's hear what he had to say.
I have a lot of respect for China, and I have a lot of respect for President Xi.
When's the last time you talked to President Xi?
I speak to him. Doesn't matter when, but I speak to him.
Have you talked to Zelensky recently?
Doesn't matter when, but I'll speak to him.
Not too long ago, yeah.
What do you think about the Zoran response? I think it's a mistake, but he's worked with Brad for years. He's known him for 10 years, and I think he just like went after his, went after to endorse his friend or someone that he knows. I don't think he has any sort of like antagonism towards Zoran Mamdani, but I do think that this is a time where a Democratic Party leadership should probably, like the progressive wing of the Democratic Party should definitely get a guy with less name recognition, who still simultaneously, due to incredible ground game and incredible policies that they identify with, has been able to make a name for himself in such a short period of time. I think it's important for national Democrats with national presence to endorse him. AOC, Bernie Sanders, and the like. And I hope they do that. I hope they endorse him, because the reality of the matter is, like, he is literally the leading contender right now after fucking Andrew Cuomo. We'll get to the Republican hogwatch in a second, by the way. I'm going to pee real quick.
Canada will respond to the U.S. auto tariffs. And today I'm announcing that the government of Canada will be responding by matching the U.S. approach, with 25% tariffs on all vehicles imported from the United States that are not compliant with CUSMA, our North American Free Trade Agreement, and on the non-Canadian content of CUSMA-compliant vehicles from the United States as well. Our tariffs, though, unlike the U.S. tariffs, will not affect auto parts, because we know the benefits of our integrated production system. And they will also not affect vehicle content from Mexico, who is respecting the CUSMA agreement. And as well, we are developing a framework for auto producers in Canada to get relief from these counter tariffs as long as they maintain their production and investment in our country. Importantly, every single dollar raised from those counter tariffs, our counter tariffs, which could reach around $8 billion before remission, will go directly to our auto workers and the companies affected by those tariffs. And that's on top of a $2 billion fund we announced last week to build a made-in-Canada auto sector, a fund that a new Liberal government would implement should we be elected.
And in response to 25% tariffs President Trump put into effect on foreign cars and car parts,
Automaker Stellantis announced a pause on production at some of its Canadian and Mexican assembly plants, and as a result, some temporary layoffs at the company's plants in Michigan and Indiana. Detroit's car companies are already making changes in response to President Trump's new tariffs on the auto industry. Starting Monday, Stellantis will shut down its Windsor assembly plant for 2 weeks. The factory makes the Chrysler Pacifica minivan and similar models.
It's for the U.S. market today.
This was what I was trying to explain in terms of this is also not inefficient, just pay labor. Dude. At its most basic level of comprehension, you need to understand something. There's just simply shit. This is so inefficient just to not pay labor. No, some of this is directly done to offset some of the costs to a cheaper labor site to a different country. Some of it is not. Like, what are you supposed to do? There's certain parts of the production line that need like raw materials that you just don't have here, for example. It's not always done specifically to it's not always done specifically because like they want to. I mean, it's always done to offset the cost. But some of that is not done to offset the labor cost, if that makes sense. Literally, the most short-term solution to a problem that you're creating of all time. Oh, great. They bought 1 month's worth of supplies in. Is so fucking stupid. I'm sure they brought more than 1 month's worth of supply, but it's like, okay, why are you doing it then? Like, this is what I don't understand. Not every aspect of this production is sent overseas because American labor is too expensive. You need to understand that as well. And the parts that are actually sent to other countries, ironically enough, Trump also advocated for with the USMCA.
President Trump speaking about.
Oh my God. Amazing. I can't wait to hear what Greg Buttfeld has to say.
Americans. A tariff isn't paid by the exporter. China's not going to pay the tariff. The buyer is going to pay the tariff.
Donald Trump has proposed a 40% tariff, which is a tax on all of you. I think raising your taxes by 40% would kill jobs all across this country.
I have never agreed with the president's tariff policy, and that's why I do call him and I say, Mr. President, I need to talk to you about these tariffs. And he will come back and he'll say, oh, Joni, I know that you don't like tariffs, but I'm a tariff guy.
Taxing European car imports hurts BMW because they can do the same thing to us. China wins when we fight with Europe. China wins when the American consumer has higher prices because of tariffs that don't affect Chinese behavior.
Now with a 10% tariff laid down, who pays that tariff? The American workers and the American companies pay the brunt of all those. So far, Americans have paid $12 billion in tariffs. It's not punishing the Chinese, it's punishing us.
You know, the highest tariff levels in the history of this country, the Smoot-Hawley tariffs, were enacted, and it shut down.
You know what I fucking hate about this? Why couldn't Trump do this for another thing that conservatives hate that would be beneficial in the short term or certainly in the long term for American workers? Like, why did it have to be this where he gets to dominate them and bully them and tell them to shut the fuck up? I hate that. This feels like Trump could be like, I want to do universal health care. And these guys would be like, that's communism. Turning around and being like, this is actually great, Mr. President. These are all the Republicans who understandably are insanely anti-tariff. Now, you might be wondering, Hassan, didn't you? I mean, or you might not be wondering. This will help you better understand why I'm not immediately anti-tariff. These guys want super profits for corporations. Those super profits can only be maintained through American imperialism and the subsequent quote-unquote free trade negotiations that take place. Low-cost sites exist inside of the United States of America, but the global south is basically a universal low-cost site across the board because the most malleable aspect of commodity production that can become more efficient, as in reduced, is the labor side. And the most effective method of lowering labor prices, lowering wages, is by shipping them overseas. In the past, countries didn't allow for that sort of thing. For understandable reason, because why the fuck would you sell out your entire labor force? These guys hate tariffs, or until, you know, Trump bullied them into submission, basically, because their goal is to maintain those super profits for corporations. They're fucking assholes. So make no mistake, I'm not anti-tariff. I'm not anti-tariff at all. I am in favor of trade protectionist policies. Having said that, however, I do not believe that Donald Trump will actually engage in trade protectionist policies, because that would require him to actually forcibly build manufacturing in this country. That would require a tremendous amount of public funds to be expended in the process. That would require Donald Trump, especially to do it in a pro-labor way, to make sure that these new factories that are being built would have to have union employees. This is something that even the Biden administration didn't do, by the way. With the fucking CHIPS Act and with the Build Back Better, even the Brandon administration didn't enforce American companies to only hire unionized workforces. Makes no sense.
On world trade, there's little doubt that these protectionist barriers that were put up in 1930 or 31 made the Great Depression worse. So let's not repeat that mistake.
I hope that our administration is looking at ways to expand and grow opportunities for American businesses and farmers and ranchers, and not get us into this tit-for-tat trade war with some of these countries, even China.
A generalized tariff that would actually harm allies, harm American consumers, by the way. And again, if we start engaging in trade wars, I just don't believe anybody wins a trade war, quite honestly. I just think there's so much collateral damage. I think it's a very risky and dangerous strategy.
So, I'm much more of a free trader. I have worry about retaliation against our products that certainly we have a lot of in Wyoming. So I'm focused on the businesses here at home, the impact of trade, and the impact of tariffs, which I have concerns about, and specifically the retaliation that may come as a result of this new announcement.
Strong trade relationships, particularly with Canada and Mexico, are primary drivers of our nation's economy. We must protect those relationships and be careful as we consider changes in our approach to trade, to be certain that Americans continue to benefit from the economic opportunities that have created by a strong trade policy.
I'm just so jealous. I'm so incredibly jealous. I hate that Trump gets to do this and do it in the wrong direction too. And you still have these strong right-wing institutions defending him every step of the fucking way, even if his popularity diminishes. Let's hear from Harry Enton on how unpopular these policies will look like.
Harry, the press secretary criticized the people she calls the naysayers when it comes to these tariffs. Who are the naysayers?
The naysayers are the majority of the American public. It's the American people who are the naysayers. Oppose new tariffs on other countries. All goods, look at this, 56% of Americans oppose new tariffs on all goods. How about cars in particular? 56% of Americans oppose new tariffs on imported cars and car parts. Look, the bottom line is the American people oppose. No, no, no. They do not want new tariffs. I looked at a ton of polling. It's really hard to find any in which you find folks supporting new tariffs, maybe against China, but against all other countries, especially our allies, no, no, no. Oppose.
So Caroline Leavitt again told Kate in that discussion that the president is laser focused on reducing prices. What do voters say that they believe the tariffs will do to prices?
What do voters believe the tariffs will do to prices? At least in the short term, tariffs will raise prices. Again, what do we get here? 72% of Americans overall say that the prices will go up in the short term. How about among Republicans, the Republican base? This was a shocker to me. 64% of Republicans believe that tariffs will in fact cause prices to go up in the near term. And get this, just 5% of Americans overall believe that tariffs, at least in the short term, will bring down prices. You don't have to be a mathematical genius to know, Mr. Berman, that 72 beats 5.
So this is a huge move, and it's a huge restructuring of the global economic order.
This is exactly the reason why I always say Americans don't know what they want. It's not like Trump lied and said, I will never do a tariff. He presented tariffs as his ultimate weapon. He kept repeating over and over again, this is not even a fell for it again award. This is what you wanted. This is what we voted for. And yet, here we are, staring down the barrel of the gun. And so many Americans are going, what the fuck? Please understand that this is the same principle for virtually every kind of policy you can point to. I thought I'd never have to make this point ever again after the abortion debacle, when Republicans went on a tangent talking about how abortion is murder, only to undermine women's bodily autonomy and then subsequently make arguments for murder. Yes, abortion is murder, but in some instances, murder is fine, is what the argument devolved into. Why? Because Republicans, once that freedom was taken away from them, realized quickly, oh, fuck, I wanted that freedom actually. Fuck limiting abortions. I love murder. I want a baby murder. What people think they want in terms of policies is very different once those policies are implemented. Okay? Understand that.
Damn, this guy's good.